Hello, a very good morning. It's 7 o'clock. This is Mornings with Jones and Melbourne. I'm Anna.
And I'm Kamali. Thanks for starting your day with us. Here's how we're looking.
Flu cases are surging like never before. The NHS is likened to a teetering Jenga tower. The Health Secretary says doctors' strikes will be the brick that breaks it.
A £20,000 appeal to find Rosa's killer, the grandmother bludgeoned to death at her home in Liverpool.
Britain answers NATO's warning. The Armed Forces Minister says the UK is drawing up plans to rapidly prepare the country for war.
Yeah, we'll get some reaction to that, and we're going to bring you the latest GDP figures, which have just dropped. We'll put all of that to the government in just a few minutes' time.
Plus, we hear how asylum seekers are disappearing from those controversial hotels on a daily basis, entering the country's dark economy.
Hello, good morning. Thanks for being with us. We begin the hour with breaking news about the country's economy. Let's bring in our business and economics correspondent, Paul Kelso, who is here with the latest GDP figures. Morning to you, Paul.
Good morning.
What are they telling us?
They're telling us that the economy has contracted, which wasn't expected. These are the figures for October, showed on a monthly basis, GDP fell by 0.1%. The figure we really look at is the three-month rolling average. That also contracted 0.1% when we add in this figure. So the monthly figure was actually expected to show a little bit of increase in size in the economy. That was the economic consensus. So that has been proved wrong. Likewise, the expectation was a flat 3 months to October. And that's wrong too. So there's not much cheer here. One of the reasons there was an expectation of a bounce back was the September figures, which were also disappointing, included a big decline in manufacturing output as it's known, which is basically about Jaguar Land Rover, that cyber attack which shut down production, caused a contraction in manufacturing of 2%. That's a huge monthly drop, nearly 30% decline in car manufacturing in Britain. So it's a really important company. The expectation was the bounce back might nudge the economy into more positive territory, but it hasn't proved the case. Just a couple of highlights from the release from the Office of National Statistics. No growth in services at all. Services are 80% of the British economy. Production fell by half percentage point, and construction also fell. So it continues a trend of a slowing economy. The first half of the year where there was some growth, that contraction has followed, a slowdown has been followed by a contraction. None of it the kind of news the Chancellor wants to see. More importantly, day to day, this is not the kind of economic performance that's going to put more money in people's pockets.
No, Paul, thanks very much indeed. Yeah, that is going to be disappointing for the Chancellor.
Definitely.
Interesting to see if we get a statement from her a little bit later. The government obviously always stressing that growth is their number one priority.
It's all about growth. It's they're going to get out of this hole that they're in, but if it's contracting, it's not good news. Now, the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, has warned resident doctors, formerly known as junior doctors, of course, that next week's strike could be the Jenga piece that forces the NHS to collapse. Yeah, the health service is struggling to cope with this huge surge of super flu. The number of people in hospital has increased by more than a half in just a week, and health bosses say there's no peak in sight. So Amanda is here for us now, and this is going to be a real pressure on Wes Streeting. I mean, the health service clearly struggling to cope with the number of cases coming through the doors of hospitals. That puts Wes Streeting under pressure.
Well, yes, absolutely. I mean, the situation in the NHS clearly is pretty dire at the moment. The number of flu cases going up by 55% in a week, average of 2,660 patients a day in hospital with the flu. He's been describing it as a tidal wave that could collapse the NHS in some fairly dramatic language. And I think he's really trying to use the kind of sense of urgency to try and put pressure on the doctors, the resident doctors who are planning their 5-day strike just before Christmas, starting next Wednesday, to kind of urge them. He's talking about sort of Christmas goodwill to try and kind of pressurise them into calling off the strikes. And I'll read you another quote from his article that he's written for The Times this morning. He says the whole NHS team is working around the clock to keep the show on the road, but it's an incredibly precarious situation, and Christmas strikes could be the Jenga piece that collapses the tower. Now, the British Medical Association have agreed to survey their members to see whether they would agree to call off the strikes, but that's not due to come back until Monday, and of course they're due to start on Wednesday. The government has got a new offer on the table as of Wednesday, so they're basically offering more training places for junior doctors resident doctors going on to become consultants, and also restricting the number of foreign overseas doctors who can apply for those positions, as well as offering more money to pay them back for the kind of mandatory exam fees that they have to pay for, as well as membership of the Royal Colleges. But many members of the BMA saying, well, actually, this doesn't address our key issue, which is about pay. They're still demanding sort of 26% increase after having had nearly 30% last time around. Streeting's really trying to kind of claim the moral high ground on this, saying, well, he's offered them the chance to kind of put off the strikes till January if they'll just kind of call them off before Christmas. But of course, I'm sure the BMA would say, well, we're actually making some progress now. The government's beginning to offer us more because of the threat of these Christmas strikes, because of the situation in the NHS at the moment. So it's kind of difficult because they've, clearly there's very high stakes at play.
Definitely are. And it's interesting, isn't it, Anna, that the government seems to have got themselves into this position where they are trying to have this fight with the British Medical Association, and I think that they would feel that many in the public are actually on their side, that they don't want to see these strikes continuing. We all remember the number of strikes we had through the end of the Conservative government and even under this new Labour government. And Wes Streeting, I think, had decided to pick this fight, thinking that he has the public on side, and whether or not now this latest offer will be enough.
Well, exactly, and some people felt that it was an optimistic sign that the BMA chose to go and ballot their members on the subject, but that's not necessarily the case. It's still not a given that it's going to be backed, so we'll wait and see what the result is early next week.
It's those precious bill because of the flu season, of course. All right, now, there is a £20,000 reward being offered to help catch the killer of a grandmother who was killed in Liverpool.
Yeah, 68-year-old Rose Johnson was found dead with a head injury at her home more than 2 months ago. So let's find out a little bit more about this. Oliver's here with details. This sounds like a really grim case.
Yeah, it is. And the police have been carrying out their investigations ever since October the 4th, when the body of Rose Johnson was found at her home in Dovecot in Liverpool. They have been going house to house, CCTV inquiries, forensic inquiries. They've been trying to find witnesses, all in a bid to try and solve this case. But now, seemingly, they're desperate to try and find answers, that they're having to offer this £20,000 reward. Merseyside Police says somebody must know something, and they're urging for people to come forward, and Crime Stoppers is the one that's going to be offering this reward. We've heard from their regional manager, Gary Murray. He said, we know that people often stay silent if they know something, excuse me, about serious crime like this out of fear or because they don't want to get involved. But Crime Stoppers offers a completely safe and anonymous way to speak up. You can contact our charity, which is independent of the police, and will never be asked about your personal details. We can't trace your call or online form, and you'll remain 100% anonymous. That means no comeback. He then finally says, if you know what happened to Rose or have suspicions about who's responsible, please let us know. The police say they're looking for any information about people that saw Rose in the early hours of October the 3rd, or about anybody that was seen acting suspiciously in that Dovecot area around the 4th of October.
OK, yeah, really important appeal. Ollie, thanks very much indeed.
Thanks, Ollie. Well, the government has promised to create 50,000 more places for children with special educational needs in mainstream schools in England.
Yeah, those new places will come from £3 billion in funding, and it means that kids who need more support in the classroom won't have to travel as far. So let's get some reaction from our education reporter. Anjan Pirbakos is here. Morning to you, Anjan.
Morning.
So what do you make of this government announcement?
I mean, £3 billion sounds like a massive amount of money to go into the sector, and especially where it's needed, where you've got children who are really kind of suffering, and their families, obviously, where the travel cost has come into play and all of those things, where there isn't a service in the local area. So £3 billion is a lot of money. But there's some context, wider context, and some other figures that we should throw in there. There are about 24,000 schools in the country, so then you need to divide that up and think about which ones would need that kind of allocation of funds. There are 1.7 million children with special educational needs and disabilities currently in the country. So £3 billion sounds great, and I think it's fantastic that the sector is being invested in that way. But we need to look at the breakdown of how that would actually be on the ground, and I think that's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see, well, how is this funding and how are these places going to be allocated? allocated? How are the children and the staff who need to support them, how is that going to be facilitated? So if the funds are going to be given to local authorities, is that money going to be ring-fenced, so specifically allocated for that particular need? Or is it going to be given to schools directly, where they can manage the funds themselves according to the number of pupils they had and according to the need that they have? And I think that is a really big question in terms of the implementation of what this will look like going forward. So I think it's a fantastic move in the right direction. I think the sector would agree, and having read the National Association of Head Teachers response, they're very pleased. But again, they're asking about how will it be facilitated? Where are the teachers coming from? Where are the specialist teachers coming from?
Do we know if it's new teachers or if it... Because there was some suggestion a few weeks ago that teachers were going to give extra training to be able to deal with this.
I mean,
is that still where they are?
That's still kind of what they're looking at in terms of training. But again, training requires investment, funding, time allocation, etc. So just looking at where this will go and how it will be implemented will be very, very interesting to see. But it is good news for the sector.
Anjum, thank you for that. And I've been making notes.
Yeah, I noticed you making notes.
So we're going to speak to the Minister for Education in a little while, and I'll put some of those questions too, because it's important to get the details. As we said, this has been sort of bubbling around, hasn't it, for quite some time. There is a white paper, I think, coming in the new year. We're not sure when in the new year, that will have more detail about
That's another question.
It is. It's there. I've already got it there. When's the white paper coming?
Yeah, there we go.
When, you know, what is actually going to happen, because as Andrew points out, 1.7 million children who are impacted by this. There's also some 46,000, I think it is, that have these education health support plans as well, care plans, which are an important factor in all of this, and whether or not the government are going to reform those, there'll be more or less. Important questions to be asked because it affects quite so many people. Lots
to talk about. Yeah,
yes.
Well, I'll be staying tuned, obviously, for that.
Make sure I get to those questions as well. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll make sure you do. Let's move on, though, because the West Bank is just one of many flashpoints between Israel and Palestine, but it's one that is hard to cover as journalists. It's rare that Israeli settlers are willing to speak to the media. Yeah, but our Middle East correspondent Adam Parsons has been able to do just that. He's been to a valley in the West Bank to speak to Amishav.
According to international law, Amishav has no rights at all to this land. It belongs to other people, to Palestinians who've harvested olive groves here for generations. But Amishav says those people have no claim, that the word of the Bible trumps anything else. Over coffee, he spells out his belief. There's no sense of doubt or compromise.
The people of Israel are returning to their land, and that is the law, that is justice, that is the right thing to do.
Amishav says he is a peace activist, but he insists those who oppose the settlers will be met with force.
We are not afraid and not worried, and anyone who raises a hand against the people of Israel, we will cut off that hand. As a state, we have tanks, we have planes, we are very strong.
There is a stark contrast here. Amishav and his family project a traditional, unthreatening image, but the outpost they've created is illegal, part of a pattern that is raising tensions here.
It's amazing reporting from Adam and team to get into the West Bank and be able to speak to settlers right at the heart of a situation there that people on both sides of that community find really difficult to deal with. Now, you can scan that QR code that you see on screen right now and watch Adam's full report. Not long after he had that interview, he takes a turn when Amishav takes issue with some of the questioning that Adam is putting to him, and say, well worth a watch. Yeah. Another thing that we wanted to bring up and discuss this morning is some dramatic words we heard yesterday about the prospect of war in Europe. We heard from the US, the Secretary-General of NATO, Mark Rutte, talking about the threat. He said, we are Russia's next target and we are already in harm's way. So a pretty apocalyptic warning that he's putting out there. A message presumably to European countries and the public there to say money really does need to be spent on building up defence, but also to get people ready kind of psychologically for war. And I noticed that here in the UK, words sort of echoed really by the Armed Forces Minister, Al Carnes, as well, who has said that the UK is rapidly developing plans to prepare the whole country for the possible outbreak of war. So a similar message coming from the UK about this. I mean, if you've been sort of paying attention and allowing this to enter your consciousness, this has been something that leaders, politicians have been saying now for a good few months. We heard John Healey talk about it, preparedness. We've even heard the Prime Minister talk about it too. Just last week when we spoke to Ray Mears about sort of survival, and that was about being prepared for war. I mean, hearing Mark Rutte say those words, talking about we need to be thinking about our grandparents and great-grandparents' generation and how they had to deal with the First and Second World War, it's stark. And then the UK government to get behind it as well through the words of Al Cairns. It's on the front of some of the newspapers this morning, talking about how ready we need to be for any potential conflict. Of course, the fear would be a wide conflict with Russia. I don't think that's potentially where we are yet, but there may well be some kind of interaction with the Russians, at sea or in the air, that we need to be prepared for, and the impact it will then have on us here in the country. So the government are at great pains to try and make sure that we're all understanding the consequences of what's going on in Europe right now.
Yeah, absolutely. At least psychologically aware, absolutely.
100%. All right. Well, look, let's put some of the questions we've had so far this morning about that and other things to Minister of State for School Standards, Georgia Gould, who I'm very pleased to say has joined us. Minister, thanks very much for being with us. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Quite a few things to get through today, so let me crack straight on. We'll start with the doctors' strike. Just how angry is the government at the BMA for their decision to continue with their action?
The government has listened to junior doctors. We put an offer on the table that includes new training places. It's on top of a 30% increase in pay that's happened. So, you know, we are really asking junior doctors to reject this strike, to come back to work. There's huge pressure on the NHS, and we need junior doctors to be supporting us to deal with that.
To just go around the BMA leadership and just not listen to what they're being told by their leaders?
Well, we have listened, and we have putting more support in place, more training in place, and these are some of the things that the junior doctors have asked for, and we are appealing directly to junior doctors to support the NHS over Christmas, because we don't want people's operations to be cancelled. We know the pressure that the NHS is under, and it's so important that we are supporting patients at this time, and we're deeply grateful for the NHS staff who work so hard every single day.
All of them. I mean, we've got a huge rise in flu cases. Thing is about this plan for new places. I mean, we've known there's been a lack of places for doctors for a long time. It feels like a negotiating strategy. You've waited, the government have waited until this point, until we're right before Christmas, right in the midst of this flu pandemic, to offer this little sop to them. Why didn't you do it earlier? Because you're as much to blame for it getting this crisis point as they are.
So since we've come into power, we've invested in pay for junior doctors, and we continue to listen, and that's why we put an extra offer on the table to create those training places. And I think it's right.
Could have done it sooner, though.
I think it's right that we are listening, that we are in those conversations, and that we're acting on what people say.
Still think you could have done it sooner, but we'll move on to your area of expertise and this £3 billion for special educational needs. I don't know if you heard our education correspondent Andrew Pierbakos just earlier with some quite specific questions about all of this. Why don't you tell us about the idea, £3 billion, and why it's needed? Yeah,
I'm really excited about this £3 billion. It's going to be going into communities around the country to support children with special educational needs. So it might be a new building, it might be adapting a classroom, or making a school more accessible for disabled pupils. And, it will be transformative. I was at a school on Tuesday where 30 children were in a new purpose-built space, and their parents were telling me the difference it had made for their children. These were children who were out of school, who were struggling to learn, and they were thriving. They said they'd made more progress in a month than they had in years before. And one mum said that her child was in the nativity play that she could never have imagined. So, it makes a real difference. I've seen it. I've seen so many different examples of this, and we want that for children across the country.
It's not a nothing amount of money. £3 billion is significant. So where's the money going to go? Is it going to schools directly, or is it going to local government?
It's going to go to local government. We're going to be setting out the full allocation in the new year, and we're going to be asking local government to make sure that we are really prioritising places for children with special educational needs to get into the right place for them as quickly as possible.
So prioritising, will it be protected?
Oh yeah, so it's protected. This is for this purpose.
So local government can't then use this money for other things that they might want to.
This money is for places for children with special educational needs, and this money we expect to support 50,000 children to get a place. So it will transform the outcomes for those children.
So are you going to be looking as well? Because you've got a white paper coming, haven't you?
Yes.
When is that coming?
It's coming early in the new year.
Early in the new year.
We're in the middle of a co-creation with families. Well, I'm out every day talking to families, and we've been really clear that even before the formal consultation, we want to hear from parents, from young people, many of whom tell me how they've been badly let down by the system, and their voices have to shape this. So we're in the middle of this. We've got, in the new year, I'm be travelling to Darlington, Leeds, around the country. So we want to do this as quickly as possible. There's a real urgency for change, but we want to do it in a way that brings the voices of families. So we'll take the time to do that.
So in those conversations, you will have heard about education, health care plans and the concerns that some parents have around the bureaucracy of those. Are you going to make them easier to be accessed?
So I hear from parents all the time how many years it takes for them to get support. As I spoke to a parent on Wednesday who had spent £30,000 trying to get support for their child, and she really believed that her child could have been educated well within a mainstream school, but that support had not been put in place. And 6 years later, they'd reached crisis points. So, parents do talk about the bureaucracy, but they also talk about the importance of having legal protections, of having accountability in the system. So those are the voices we're listening to, and we're going to be setting out the full plans in the new year.
You're going to reduce the bureaucracy. You're going to make it easier for the parents to get to. The parents should not be spending 30 grand to get their kids the support.
Oh yeah, I can absolutely say that we are going to make support in place much earlier. We want to respond to the needs of children as soon as they kind of express themselves and put that support in place. And that's why we're putting this £3 billion in today, because we want more support available in mainstream schools. And one of the real positives of when there is a specialist space next to a mainstream school is that the kind of expertise of the teachers within that space spreads to the whole school, and you create so much more support for children within mainstream lessons. So this is all about putting more support in earlier.
We're going to be talking about anxiety in schools later on this morning. What are the government doing to reduce anxiety? I mean, the numbers are stark. Half of pupils say they've skipped out of school because they feel anxious.
Yeah, this is something I hear a lot. I was, talking to a young person just the other day who'd been out of school because of anxiety, and the school, in one of these specialist spaces, had kind of brought them in and worked with them one-to-one, and they were slowly moving their way back into lessons. So anxiety is a massive issue. We're investing in mental health teams to sit in schools.
Extra $3 billion.
The $3 billion is to go into space. So we're investing in mental health support, which is really critical, and we want to build support around families. And I've seen really brilliant practice in schools where schools are, with breakfast clubs that we're investing in primary schools. Schools are using that space in the morning to have a really fun moment, that children get breakfast, have fun with their friends, and then come into school. I was at a school on Wednesday where they put on extracurricular activities that children loved, and a young woman said to me, "This is the best part of my day, and it's a deal with the school. Because of this, I come in for the other lessons." So there's great practice we can learn from.
It's because you're going to schools and you're seeing firsthand how it's actually playing out.
It's the absolute best part of my job. Yeah.
A couple more things, a couple of different topics, kind of connected. We don't have loads of time, so I'm going to get through them as quick as possible. Donald Trump, in the past week or so, has talked about civilizational erasure in Europe. Is the president right? Is Europe facing a crisis of civilization?
So I think the president says a lot of different things. I'm not going to comment on all of them, but I think that I'm very proud of the UK, of Europe, of our diverse, strong society, and I'm proud to be a minister in the UK government.
Why would he be attacking Europe's civilizational structure? He talks about migration tearing Europe apart. I mean, you don't agree with that, do you?
So we're really clear that migration has been something that has benefited our country over generations, but we do want to see control over our borders. It's right that we see that control. That's what people would expect, and we're making changes to deliver that. But I am so proud to live in a diverse country and a diverse constituency.
OK. We heard yesterday that there were going to be 25 more people put into the House of Lords. Your leader once talked about abolishing it. What's going on? Why are you adding more in?
It's right that the House of Lords kind of reflects the House of Commons and Parliament, but we are continuing to reform the House of Lords. We've abolished hereditary peers, and we will be bringing forward reforms in the future.
So you are still thinking about abolishing the body?
We're still, committed to House of Lords reform, and we've taken the first step.
By getting rid of hereditary peers, but
yeah, that is an important step, and it's been a very difficult one, and something that we push forward. So we're still committed to reform.
Minister, I'm being shouted at in my ear, so I'm going to stop talking to you. But
no worries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Georgia.
Interesting stuff, lots of bases covered there.
I think so. I think we managed to get around, and I got Andrew's questions in as well, which I was happy about. So the white paper coming in the new year, couldn't get any more detail exactly when it was going to come.
Early in the new year.
But we did get that line that Andrew wanted, that the money that will be sent to local governments will be protected. They have to use that money for the send provision, which I think will be important for those that work within the sector.
Indeed. Lots coming up. We're going to be talking about dangers to journalists around the world with the International Federation of Journalists. That's coming up next.
If you have a picture in your head of how the global economy works, it probably looks a bit like this. Container ships, ports, goods transported around the world. This is globalization, the heartbeat of commerce around us, the invisible force keeping us supplied with essentials and trinkets. So what happens when you try to turn this world upside down? This is the inside story of how the world economy really works and what's really happening at the front line of Donald Trump's trade war.
hello again. Let's take you through your headlines for this morning. The Health Secretary Wes Streeting has warned resident doctors the next week's strikes could be the Jenga piece that forces the NHS to collapse. It comes as new figures reveal the number of people in hospital with flu has increased by more than half in just 1 week.
The UK economy contracted by 0.1% in October, according to official figures. Economists had predicted that October GDP would grow by 0.1%.
And a reward of £20,000 is on offer to help find the killer of a grandmother from Liverpool. 68-year-old Rose Johnston was found dead after sustaining a head injury at her home more than 2 months ago.
Now, as journalists, we spend our time telling other people's stories, and we're very lucky to be able to do that safely here in the studio.
But we want to spend a little bit of time talking about those individuals who put their lives on the line to share those important stories in a world that seems to be becoming increasingly dangerous.
Well, according to the International Federation of Journalists, 111 journalists have been killed so far this year. That's considerably higher than the average over the last 3 decades. Of those 111, 69 were killed in the Middle East.
Well, the Federation's also released a list of 533 journalists who are currently in prison. China stands out as the world's biggest jailer of journalists.
Well, let's talk about this a little bit further. We are joined now by Dominique Pradelier, who's president of the International Federation of Journalists. So, very good morning to you. Thanks so much for talking to us. Those are pretty grim figures there, a dangerous year for journalists around the world.
Good morning to all. It's dangerous for journalists everywhere now because a real war has been declared in most countries against press freedom. And the average enormous of journalists killed shows how little governments do to press freedom, how little they act, how little they declare for journalists killed. It's a shame around the world to see that you and me are just threatened all the time. And in most countries, people won't know about their health problems, about government is doing with their income tax money, about what is going on in the world. If it goes on like that, it's really a blatant thing to consider that journalists doing, fulfilling their duties are just people that can be killed anytime. Once it looks like a pandemia, but the pandemia has a word for it. It's impunity. Impunity is a cancer that ruins all democracies, that ruins journalists and press freedom.
Dominic, good morning to you. It's Kamali here. Look, it's not just journalists being killed as well, it's journalists being jailed, and it's that controlled by authoritarian states of information. As you say, people in many countries don't have access to information that would provide them with the chance to challenge authority because those authoritarian states want to keep that information suppressed. How can we subvert that? Because it's not as if the internet is an entirely free space.
Yeah. We can, because in 2022 in Vienna, Austria, the United Nations scrutinized their wonderful plan for journalist safety, 10 years plan, very good plan. In the same 10 years, 1,000 journalists had been killed. It just means that there is nothing concrete in the plan, no obligation, nobody is accountable for their death. So that's why IFJ, that represents about 600,000 journalists in 146 countries, decided with international lawyers to draw a plan, a convention that should be adopted by United Nations. The quickest is the best, with 3 different concrete possibilities. One is a permanent independent international survey. The second one is the obligation for each government to say each and every year what they have been doing for press freedom. And the third one is the possibility to have international team, crew, going in each and every country where journalists have been killed and nobody has been found accountable for it, and draw the killer and their sponsors to justice with three different concrete possibilities. United Nations should help us to have real press freedom and to protect journalists and media workers. If not, there won't be any journalists any longer within a few years because we are not specialist heroes, you know. And citizens must ask and make each and every government accountable for it. Each and every government, democratic government, must say publicly, we are going to support this convention project, international project, to make sure that we can protect journalists around the world.
OK, well, Dominique Pradalier, thank you very much indeed for joining us and sharing your thoughts on this really sober message today. Thanks very much indeed. And it really is grim, the number of people who have died. 111 journalists' deaths this year, as well as those 533 in prison as well. And our thoughts to our own colleagues who put their lives at risk out in conflict zones and elsewhere.
Well, it's to tell the story, isn't it? And that's the most important thing, as Dominic was mentioning there are governments, countries, organisations that don't want stories being told for the fear that people will have too much information. I mean, our own colleagues who sadly came under attack in Ukraine, Stuart, Dominique and Richie, thankfully they escaped safely, but that was because they were reporting on what the Russians were doing, and the Russians didn't want that to happen, so they attacked them. Yeah. It's terrifying. So all the best to all our colleagues out there.
Now then, a whistleblower has told Sky News that the UK's asylum system is allowing people to fall off the radar undetected and unchecked.
Yeah, in an exclusive interview, the contractor said people are absconding from asylum hotels weekly, if not daily, at a time when the government promised to tighten up the system. Well, the Insider sat down with our own national correspondent, Tom Parmenter.
He met us after work. The end of another shift inside the UK's asylum hotel system. We've changed his voice because he wants to remain anonymous.
We actually had an absconder today from the hotel. When somebody gets to about a week away from the hotel, they're processed as an absconder. Nothing really happens there. A notification is sent to the Home Office.
So there's no check?
No check.
They disappear?
Yeah. It's at least weekly. Most of the time, it can be daily.
When someone gets a decision on their claim for asylum and they're rejected, what happens?
The resident is sent a letter from the Home Office explaining to them that their asylum claim has been refused. They get given a date that they need to move out by. You would expect immigration enforcement to go to the hotel to pick these people up. There's no further steps from there to identify where the person has gone after they've left the hotel, to collect them and have them deported. They know that they've got their asylum failed anyway. What have they got to lose by just going underground and working illegally and just getting by for as long as they can? They can do whatever they want because no one knows what address they do live at, who they are. They're just completely invisible within society. For those people to freely be allowed, undetected and unchecked on the streets of this country is terrifying. And I almost suspect that people know that once they get onto British soil, they're here to stay. They can't be removed. They won't be removed.
This points to a broken system that is losing both people and the confidence of the British public.
I understand a lot of people are afraid. But if there's those things in place where we can monitor who is around, then everybody can feel a lot safer.
Shabana volunteers at this community kitchen in Greater Manchester. She says that every week they see more people who have fallen out of the asylum system.
If people are coming into the UK and we don't know who they are and they're just disappearing, crime rates are going to go up. Slavery is going to go higher. Child exploitation is going to be more exposed. A lot more is going to happen where people are going to be at so much risk, but they are too afraid to go to the authorities because they are scared of being deported to a country where their lives could be at risk.
And it creates tension in the UK's communities.
Absolutely, yes, it is doing.
The government says it will close asylum hotels, scale up removals and address what's drawing illegal migrants to the UK. A spokesperson said nearly 50,000 people with no right to be in our country have been removed, and enforcement arrests to tackle illegal working are at the highest level in recent history. A dedicated team in the Home Office works with police across government and commercial companies to trace absconders. Failure to return to a hotel can also lead to asylum claims and support being withdrawn. They are taking a tougher stance. But this is a dysfunctional system that is still losing people every day. Tom Parmenter, Sky News.
We're very pleased to say that Tom has joined us in the studio. Tom, a morning to you. Great reporting, as always. I mean, you describe the system as dysfunctional there, which is right. We've heard what the government had to say about this, but hearing from someone within the system is so important to see what it's actually like at the coalface.
Yes, we know that the asylum system in this country is riddled with problems, well documented. It creates great anger amongst people, and the government has admitted that this is a very problematic system that we are trying to fix. When you hear the Home Secretary standing up last month, promising the biggest overhaul in a generation, radical reform, tightening the system, trying to get that control into it, well, this is what they're up against. The reality day to day from this man who has spoken to us about his experience working in the system, again, going to work today, trying to make a difference, trying to hold this together, and actually they can't because this is just not working. It's not tight enough. And the knock-on effects, as we heard from that community kitchen, are just unknown because you can't really measure precisely what's happened because you can't see it. It's having a corrosive effect.
Have a clear idea of the numbers because people are disappearing.
Yeah, and it has such a corrosive effect on our communities, tensions, instance of racism. We have just that build-up that this isn't being properly sorted out, despite what the government are saying. And that's perhaps the biggest challenge of Keir Starmer's government, that all of these things put together, you think of stopping the boats, regaining control, finding these people. Where are they in our country? And there are immigration enforcement raids happening more regularly. They are deporting more people, but this is a problem that they can't particularly measure, and that is so hard to try and crack.
Well, yeah, and you hear the promises and you think it makes sense for the government to do this, to ease community relations, but also so that people look on the government more kindly as well. But it obviously is a really complicated thing to fix.
It is, and it runs deep, and because you can't necessarily see precisely what this dysfunctional system has created, then you can tackle what's in front of you, but you have to really go deep into where these people are, how are they making money, how are they surviving in our communities, and they're turning quite often to people for help, but also organised crime groups are involved in kind of manipulating people, exploiting people who've found themselves in this dysfunctional system. It all needs fixing. And we spoke to this man who works in the hotel system at multiple hotels in one region of England, and he was exasperated by what he sees day to day and will be in his work doing that again today, trying to hold it together, make it work somehow. But he chose to speak to us because at the moment, this is still the reality of what they're dealing with on the front line. I mean,
Tom, you've been across this story now for a good number of years. Is some of the heat that perhaps we felt over the summer where there were people who were on the loose, as you reported, from asylum hotels, does some of that heat come out of some of the feeling around this, or is it still just there? I mean, I'm trying to get a sense of how people are feeling that work in the system and people who work and live next to where these places are.
I think it's unease, really, in British communities around the country that, oh, wait a minute, who is here? Who's living here? Do I really want to go for a night out in our town centre because of who is around? That has a big impact on our economy. There are so many facets to this, and it runs really deep. And as I say, it's a huge challenge for the government to try to come through on all those promises to make sure that that enforcement of the rules is happening. And we spoke to that man who works in the hotel system, and he said, look, from his point of view, the only way of solving this is to go down the route of not allowing any freedom to those people who come into our asylum system.
Army bases, prison style, wow.
With really tight checks. So there's a debate around that and how we find the solutions that work in this country, but as you can see from that, we really do need to find them fast.
Absolutely.
Yeah, really interesting stuff. Tom,
Great
thanks
report,
very much
Tom.
indeed. Thank you. We're going to be talking about school absences, actually.
Yeah, and anxiety,
in a
actually.
moment.
I put it to the Minister, didn't I, that there's been a huge increase in the number of children reporting themselves as feeling anxious, not turning up to school. 50% say they haven't been to school because of anxiety.
At some point during the year, yeah, it's a huge number. So we're going to be talking to Hugh Viney, who's Chief Executive of Minerva Virtual Academy, and also Claire Neal, who's the mother of a child who struggled with anxiety at school. So lots more on that coming up.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Big Sky News journalist. Ed Conway. Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent.
The enormous explosion that's just come down. I think it was a monster just landed in between us.
Hundreds and hundreds of people hoping to get north, ultimately to get to the United States.
It's a border where they're not welcome, yet they keep coming.
We saw snatch squads going in, grabbing people, taking them out and putting them into trucks and taking them away.
They make about 50 kilos of fentanyl a week. It's incredibly dangerous and toxic stuff.
There's been an upsurge in deaths. The fighting between the gangs is getting more and more vicious.
Is this now all your territory?
Yeah.
The battlefield is outside the barricades, which is over there. This is much more like a normal town. It's really sending a clear message that Venezuela is eager for change.
We're being crushed. Free from wherever you get your news.
We are in the middle of a forest, in a jungle really, and they're attempting to keep these men alive. This is real, hardcore emergency medicine.
The information on this could bring down the entire network, not just in Iraq and Syria, but across the world. Sky News, the full story first.
Well, hundreds of thousands of people have been using the beast for years to traverse Mexico, but it is really dangerous. Many people have died riding it.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
Now, almost half of all secondary school pupils have skipped school at some point over the last year because of anxiety.
Yeah, it's really increased. A survey of around 2,000 students found that girls are more likely to feel anxious and that exams are the main reason. Well, let's get some more on this. We can speak to Hugh Viney, who's the founder of Minerva Virtual Academy, and Claire Neal, whose teenage daughter struggles with anxiety. Guys, thanks for being with us. Hugh, let me come to you first of all. What have you found within your educational establishment about how people are feeling, how those students are feeling, and how much they're trying to get time off because of anxiety?
Well, look, before we came on, you were talking about asylum seekers, you were talking about the immigration crisis, but currently 1.3 million students in the UK, 1.3 million kids are consistently or persistently absent from school. 1.3 million. And half of those, at least, is due to anxiety or mental health reasons. Yes, there's been a sharp uplift in the last few years for various reasons, but the point is, traditional schools, the mainstream setup, it's not the teacher's fault, it's not the parents' fault, it's not the kids' fault either. The school itself, the system itself, is what's causing the anxiety. For some students, the building, some of them it's the classroom, some of them it's the way they're learning, but there's a lot of reasons, and what we need now is different kinds of schools.
Well, we'll expand on that in a little bit, but first I do want to get Claire's experience and what her daughter has gone through to get a kind of first-hand account. Claire, morning to you. Tell us a little bit about the anxieties that your daughter has suffered and how that's made her feel about school.
Yeah, I mean, since about year 7, it started to get rapidly worse, getting her in the morning, getting her up in the morning, you know, in holidays as well. By the time it got to the end of the holiday, the anxiety would ramp up again about getting her in. Also, you know, every Sunday night as well, she'd be really, really bad. The anxiety was just awful.
Do you know what it was that she was particularly anxious about? Was it about the actual structure of the school, as Hugh was talking about, or was it some of the pressures of achieving, or what was it? What did she express to you?
It was a build-up of quite a lot of things, actually. It could be, for instance, her geography room. There was lots of things hanging from the ceiling, and it just felt completely overwhelming. Also, just things like uniform checks. They'd constantly be doing uniform checks. And, you know, 9 out of 10 children, when they'd say, if you don't have the correct uniform, it's not the correct length, if your shoes look too much like trainers, you'll be going home. Just things like that would just completely unravel her. Yeah, it was a lot of things. It was a lot of things that would worry her.
Claire, it's Kamali here. Obviously, I hope that Ruby has been able to find somewhere where she is supported in her education. How would you answer some of those parents who might be looking on and thinking, well, you know, it's kind of tough to be a teenager sometimes going to school. How unique is it for Ruby, and how much do you think things feel different now for kids?
Well, Ruby now is at MVA. She was at home more than she was at school. It was rapidly getting worse. My husband and myself both work full time. You know, we'd get calls from the school saying that she was in the medical room. Could we come and get her? And we just couldn't go on like it. So I'd actually looked at Minerva 2 years ago, but was really worried about kind of making that jump. And in the end, I just felt for her mental health and for the family, we needed something different. And at the moment, she's been there since September, and she's like a different child, completely different child.
And Hugh, tell us a little bit more about this rise in anxiety. Do you think the pressures on young people are greater these days? I mean, they do have to deal with social media, which certainly I didn't when I was growing up. Is it the pressure on exams? Do you think that's greater now? What do you think some of the root causes are?
Look, social media, exams, traditional things we might talk about in this circumstance. But, you know, and Australia leading the way by banning social media for under 16s. Look, 33% of our students come to us because of their anxiety. 90% of those is because of social media. So it's clearly a factor in anxiety, and only Australia are the ones taking any leadership on banning social media for under 16s. However, I just want to, you know, go back to exams, exam pressure, school pressure. The most radical thing about us isn't the fact we're online. The most radical thing about us is, well, one of the most radical things is our teachers are called by their first name. Kids can wear what they want. They don't have to wear uniform. And guys, when you break down those barriers, when a kid can come into school every day wearing what they like, or calling their teacher by their first name, our principal is called Suzanne. She's not called Miss Lindley. Honestly, the barriers that breaks down, the way that makes children feel comfortable again, therefore engage more with the learning, therefore learn more and make more friends, is remarkable. There's little things you can do that can help with the anxiety that will go a long way.
Okay, Hugh, thank you for that, and Claire as well, thank you, and all the best to Ruby, Claire and the rest of your family. Thank you so much for being with us this morning, guys.
Now then, time to talk sport. Jackie is here. And Jackie, we've been following Luke Littler for a while now, haven't we? Well, the whole country has, let's be honest, but a particular interest. And he's kicked off is it the World Darts?
The World Championships at Ali Pali. And when it comes around, you kind of know it's nearly Christmas because you see all the great outfits and it just is fun. Anyway, he was the kind of main attraction last night and I think he must have been quite nervous. He says he doesn't get nervous, but I think he must, starting off, defending your title, you must be quite nervous. But it was fine. He beat Darius Labanauskis of Lithuania. It was 3-0, 3-0, but he didn't have things all his own way. It was a bit of a battle, but I suppose a good match to sort of get going with. But there were some good outfits. His average, his 3-dot average, 101.54, which is...
Sounds pretty good.
Which is pretty... I mean, what's your 3-dot average?
I mean, 0. Don't hit the board.
Don't hit anyone else.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't take someone's eye out.
But tickets last night, interestingly, it sells out in about 12 minutes, that event, for the whole thing. Tickets are about sort of 40, 50, 60 quid, depending on where you're sitting in the arena. Compare that to the price of the World Cup tickets, which came out yesterday, which absolutely exorbitant. So if you wanted to get ahead of yourself and assume that England will get to the final, buy a ticket for that final, it will try and get one in the ballot. Over £3,000 was the cheapest ticket,
so
up to nearly £7,000.
Yeah, don't forget about your flights.
And that is,
these two are to blame.
Compared to Qatar, 450 quid for a final ticket, and compared to the Euros, 30 times more expensive than the Euros final 2 years ago.
There's been a bit of backlash, hasn't there? There's a bit of anger about this,
real backlash, real anger, and it's, the real fans are not being considered. This will just be corporate bods and people who are very well-heeled.
Boring.
And we will show you some goals next out.
We will. We will. Do come back. Please come
Forest
back.
goals, I think.
Jackie will come back. We'll have top stories too next day.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Big Sky News journalist. Ed Conway. Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
Hello, a very good morning. It's 8 o'clock. This is Mornings with Jones and Melbourne. I'm Anna.
And I'm Kamali. Thank you for starting your day with us. Here's how we're looking.
Flu cases are surging like never before. The NHS is likened to a teetering Jenga tower. The Health Secretary says doctors' strikes will be the brick that breaks it.
A £20,000 reward offers to find the killer of Rose, a grandmother who was bludgeoned to death at home in Liverpool.
Britain answers NATO's warning. The Armed Forces Minister says the UK is drawing up plans to rapidly prepare the country for war.
Well, this year's Christmas lecture will be by Dr. Maggie Pocock. I'm pleased to say she will join us in the studio a little later to talk about space.
I know, looking forward to that.
We are indeed.
Also, straight from the red carpet premiere, Debbie Ridgard joins us for the drama of Avatar's latest instalment, Fire and Ash. Hello, a very good morning. Thanks for joining us. So the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, has warned resident doctors, who were formerly known as junior doctors, of course, that next week's strike could be the Jenga piece that forces the NHS to collapse.
Yeah, the Health Service is struggling to deal with the surge in flu cases. The number of people in hospital has increased by more than half in just a week, and health bosses say there is no peak in sight. Worryingly. Well, our political correspondent Amanda Akas is here for a bit more on this. Amanda, look, the government have been pretty forceful about the situation that the NHS is facing, and they're laying some of that blame at resident doctors.
Well, yes, clearly the NHS is facing a pretty dire situation with this rapid rise in the number of flu cases, an average of 2,660 patients in hospital with it every day last week, and Wes Streeting predicting that that could triple by Christmas. And he is really using that as a way of piling the pressure on the BMA to call off those strikes, which are planned for 5 days starting from Wednesday by the resident doctors. And he's issued some pretty stark warnings in an article with in the Times. He says the whole NHS team is working around the clock to keep the show on the road, but it's an incredibly precarious situation, and Christmas strikes could be the Jenga piece that collapses the tower. I mean, he's literally saying the NHS could collapse as a result of all of this, and really using the kind of Christmas period of goodwill to try and, as I say, add to this pressure on the BMA. We heard Georgia Gould, the School Standards Minister, talking to us earlier, really sort of trying to amplify that message, saying it's time for the BMA to give some ground. Let's have a listen.
We have listened, and we are putting more support in place, more training in place, and these are some of the things that the junior doctors have asked for, and we are appealing directly to junior doctors to support the NHS over Christmas, because we don't want people's operations to be cancelled. We know the pressure that the NHS is under, and it's so important that we are supporting patients at this time, and we're deeply grateful for the NHS staff who work so hard every single day.
Yeah, so Georgia Gould, they're appealing to doctors to accept this offer, but they're not being offered more money, are they? What exactly is Wes Streeting offering them?
Yes, so he's basically going to restrict the number of foreign doctors that can apply for training placements to kind of move on and become consultants, and also increase the number of training places there are, and also give them give them some money effectively, which would pay for their mandatory membership fees for the Royal Colleges they join, and also their exam fees, which can be thousands and thousands of pounds. So in a way, there is more money on the table for them in that sense. But the BMA have sort of been, leadership at least, is saying, well, it isn't the kind of pay offer. We want 26% pay increase. The government, for them, it's pretty embarrassing. They already gave them a pay increase of nearly 30% last time around. They came to office saying they were going to end this endless cycle of strikes that we saw under the Conservatives. Wes Streeting clearly trying to occupy the moral high ground, really, with this, saying, well, look, if you cancel the strikes before Christmas, then you can hold them in January, when clearly there'll still be pretty bad levels of flu cases, but obviously slightly less pressurised then. But for the BMA, clearly the threat of these strikes before Christmas is really what has led the government to the table with this additional offer. Now, they're saying to their members to go online and carry out a survey, but that won't be finalised until Monday to see whether it could be called off. So even if it is called off on Monday, that's still going to have real knock-on effects for Wednesday.
This is already in place. The plans in place for the potential of that strike have already been put in and trained. All right, Amanda, for now, thank you so much for that. Well, because Amanda was laying out there, the government finds itself in quite a tight spot here, desperately trying to make sure that the NHS doesn't fall over entirely, but also not wanting to give in to demands from the BMA, when, as Amanda points out, the government will feel like they have already done so in many aspects by giving them a pay rise. This extra places for training is an important part, but as Amanda pointed out, and as I put to the Minister as well, something they knew they could have done. They perhaps could have done this earlier to make sure we didn't end up reaching this cliff edge.
Yeah, and the figures on the number of flu cases is startling, isn't it? It's an average of 2,600 last week. That's a jump of over 50% on the week before, and fears that will rise again over the next few days. And we'll keep a track of that, of course. In the meantime, let's keep a track on some other figures, because the UK economy has unexpectedly shrunk in October. This is the latest official figures out that our business and economics correspondent Paul Kelso has been looking at. Morning to you, Paul. Not good news for the Treasury.
No, not with all that NHS to pay for and the rest of it. Where's the money come from? Growth, the government's #1 priority. It's not being delivered according to these numbers. These are figures for October. They are only 1 month's data, so there's the usual caveat with that. But the economy contracted, not just in the month, but the more important figure we look for is the 3-month trend line, and that is also a contraction of 0.1%. That's the first time the economy has contracted over a 3-month period, going back to the end of 2023. So there has been growth. While it's been tepid at times, the economy has been growing. This confirms the picture we have of an economy that has slammed on the brakes since the summer. There was growth in the first half of the year. It has slowed down. Now, based on these numbers, contracted. A couple of reasons. The main one, we talked about the Jaguar Land Rover shutdown of cyber attack, a hugely important company. Cut manufacturing output both in September. We thought there might be a rebound this month because production did come back on stream in October. Well, it's still heavily down, and that has held these numbers back. Perhaps more worrying is a continued contraction or slowdown in services, which is the larger part of the economy, completely flat over the last 3 months. And given the importance of services, that will be a concern. We've had a response from the Treasury. Often we wouldn't expect to get the Chancellor, but we might get a minister. This is just a spokesperson. I don't know if that tells us anything. But they've said, we are determined to defy the forecasts on growth and create good jobs so everyone is better off, while also helping us invest in better public services. They go on to cite the £150 that the Chancellor cut from energy bills in the budget and talk about planning reform, new runways at Heathrow and Gatwick and Sizewell C. Those aren't going to be finished for a decade. So there's a long-term plan, but long-term plans, one of the problems is they take time.
Defying the forecast sounds like magical thinking, but let's let them crack on with that.
There is a bit of, the forecasts. This is worse performance than people did expect, but the forecasts are for growth around 1.5% this year. The Bank of England, the OBR say that, and there should be some better news. Most people expect a little interest rate cut, 0.25% next week. Inflation is on track to keep falling, but it hasn't stopped. Won't stop. The Conservatives, among others, saying this is all a result, they say, of Labour's economic mismanagement.
Yeah, we're talking to the Conservatives a little bit later. I'm sure they'll say more of the same then. Paul, thanks very much indeed. Thank you.
Now, a reward of £20,000 is on offer to try and catch the killer of a grandmother in Liverpool.
Yeah, this is a really horrible case. 68-year-old Rose Johnson was found dead with a head injury at her home more than 2 months ago. So let's get a few more details. Oliver is here with us. Hi there, Oliver. And this is really awful, isn't it? Tell us what we know.
Yeah, and especially awful for the family who've described Rose Johnson as a grandmother who was kind and caring, somebody who worked as an adult tutor. She used to help people with special educational needs. Now, her body was found on the 4th of October at her home with this head injury, but the police have tried everything that they can so far. They've gone door to door, they've checked CCTV, forensic investigations, they've tried to find as many witnesses as possible, but at the minute they just can't get the information, those critical bits of information that they need to close this case. Merseyside Police believes that somebody out there must know something, and so they're appealing for people to come forward. They're looking for anybody that saw Rose either on the night of the 3rd of October, she was out in the early hours of the morning, or anybody that was acting suspiciously in the Dovecote area of Liverpool. And this £20,000 is being offered by Crime Stoppers. Gary Murray, the North West Regional Manager at Crime Stoppers, says, "We know that people often stay silent, If they know something about serious crimes like this out of fear or because they don't want to get involved, but Crime Stoppers offers a completely safe and anonymous way to speak up. He goes on to say, you can contact our charity, which is independent of the police, and will never be asked about your personal details. We can't trace your call or online form, and you'll remain 100% anonymous. That means no comeback. If you know what happened to Rose, or if you have suspicions about who's responsible, please let us know. But as you say, this is really a horrible case for the family.
They'll really be hoping that appeal does encourage someone to step forward. I appreciate the reporting. Thank you for that.
Now, the West Bank is just one of many flashpoints between Israel and Palestine, but it's one that's hard to cover as journalists. It's rare that Israeli settlers are willing to speak to the media.
Yeah, but our Middle East correspondent Adam Parsons has been able to speak to a settler. He's been to a valley in the West Bank.
According to international law, Amishav has no rights at all to this land. It belongs to other people, to Palestinians who've harvested olive groves here for generations. But Amishav says those people have no claim, that the word of the Bible trumps anything else. Over coffee, he spells out his belief. There's no sense of doubt or compromise.
The people of Israel are returning to their land, and that is the law, that is justice, that is the right thing to do.
Amishav says he is a peace activist, but he insists those who oppose the settlers will be met with force.
We are not afraid and not worried, and anyone who raises a hand against the people of Israel, we will cut off that hand. As a state, we have tanks, we have planes, we are very strong.
There is a stark contrast here. Amishav and his family project a traditional, unthreatening image, but the outpost they've created is illegal, part of a pattern that is raising tensions here.
We can watch Adam's full report by scanning that QR code right now. Of course, we'll be playing out on Sky News throughout the day. Now, he was speaking to Amishav there, as you heard, and not long after that interview took place, Amishav took some issue with Adam's line of questioning, which you can see their full exchange in Adam's full film.
Yeah, well worth a watch, that. Now, a whistleblower has told Sky News that the UK's asylum system is allowing people to fall off the radar undetected and unchecked.
Yeah. In an exclusive interview, the contractor said that people are absconding from asylum hotels on a weekly, if not daily basis, at a time when the government says they're tightening the system. Well, that individual sat down with our national correspondent, Tom Parmenter.
He met us after work. The end of another shift inside the UK's asylum hotel system. We've changed his voice because he wants to remain anonymous.
We actually had an absconder today from the hotel. When somebody gets to about a week away from the hotel, they're processed as an absconder. Nothing really happens there. A notification is sent to the Home Office.
So there's no check?
No check.
They disappear?
Yeah. It's at least weekly. Most of the time, it can be daily.
When someone gets a decision on their claim for asylum and they're rejected, what happens?
The resident is sent a letter from the Home Office explaining to them that their asylum claim has been refused. They get given a date that they need to move out by. You would expect immigration enforcement to go to the hotel to pick these people up. There's no further steps from there to identify where the person has gone after they've left the hotel, to collect them and have them deported. They know that they've got their asylum failed anyway. What have they got to lose by just going underground and working illegally and just getting by for as long as they can? They can do whatever they want because no one knows what address they do live at, who they are. They're just completely invisible within society. For those people to freely be allowed, undetected and unchecked on the streets of this country is terrifying. I almost suspect that people know that once they get onto British soil, they're here to stay. They can't be removed. They won't be removed.
This points to a broken system that is losing both people and the confidence of the British public.
I understand a lot of people are afraid. But if there's those things in place where we can monitor who is around, then everybody can feel a lot safer.
Shabana volunteers at this community kitchen in Greater Manchester. She says that every week they see more people who have fallen out of the asylum system.
If people are coming into the UK and we don't know who they are and they're just disappearing, crime rates are going to go up. Slavery is going to go higher. Child exploitation is going to be more exposed. A lot more is going to happen where people are going to be at so much risk, but they are too afraid to go to the authorities because they are scared of being deported to a country where their lives could be at risk.
And it creates tension in the UK's communities.
Absolutely, yes, it is doing.
The government says it will close asylum hotels, scale up removals and address what's drawing illegal migrants to the UK. A spokesperson said nearly 50,000 people with no right to be in our country have been removed, and enforcement arrests to tackle illegal working are at the highest level in recent history. A dedicated team in the Home Office works with police across government and commercial companies to trace absconders. Failure to return to a hotel can also lead to asylum claims and support being withdrawn. They are taking a tougher stance, but this is a dysfunctional system that is still losing people every day. Tom Parmenter, Sky News.
Now, Kamali, are you afraid of heights?
No, yes.
I think you might be after this, actually. I haven't seen it. It's about skydiving, bit of an acquired taste. Not actually my taste particularly, but I haven't done it anyway. What happens when it goes wrong?
Oh, what? Something terrible, probably.
Yeah, this is an incident in Australia. A skydiver's parachute got caught. There you can see on...
Forget about that. Not for me.
I do feel slightly sick seeing that.
Honestly, that is exactly why you would never get me jumping out of a plane.
15,000 feet in the air.
I mean, I'm sure they have recovery chutes. Why is there not more script telling me exactly what happens here? I'm sure they have recovery chutes.
They must be fine, or we wouldn't be showing it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure they have chutes to protect them, but this is perhaps one of my worst nightmares.
Yeah, no, that's horrendous.
Oh, well.
I now have a fear of heights.
All right. So no parachutes for us.
No, I'm not going to do that.
Survived with minor injuries, I'm told by the voices in my head, thankfully.
Yeah,
but yeah, no, I'm not doing that.
You can go to the cinema, though, that's quite safe, because we're going to talk about a time of major shifts in Hollywood. Studios struggling to get audiences off their sofas and into the movie theatres.
Indeed, but the industry is still pumping out those blockbusters, trying to get us into theatres. One of the biggest franchises around, Avatar, had its premiere last night. Let's take a little bit of a look.
You cannot live like this, baby. In hate.
If there is something you can do, then you must do it.
Well, let's bring in the woman with the most glamorous job in the business, Debbie Ridgard, on the red carpet like you do last night for the screening of Avatar, Fire and what was the other thing?
Fire and Ash. It's a tough job, Anna, you know.
Sorry.
Somebody's got to do it. Somebody's got to go and enjoy films for a living, you know.
It's good of you.
Did you enjoy this one?
I did really enjoy this one. Now, I did sign a lot of paperwork, so I'm not actually allowed to talk about it too much because a lot of my reviews are embargoed when the film is out on the 19th of December.
Okay.
But I will say I did enjoy a lot more than the second one. What did you think about it?
Well, we were just talking about this off camera, weren't we? Yeah, the second one I thought was a stinkeroo. I liked the first one well enough, but the second one did not live up to my expectations.
I haven't seen either of them.
Have you not?
I've got a thing about pointy ears.
Anna, that's not the thing.
As a general theme, you know, kind of...
Sci-fi fantasy, we've talked about this.
I'm not good.
I need to be educated.
That is crazy. I like the fact that it's all about ears as well.
Well, no, that's just really kind of how... Sum it up.
The Lord of the Rings. Okay.
Yeah,
that was the
That's a whole different subject.
Yeah.
But also, I've had a lot of time to catch up with it as well, because the franchise started years ago.
Yeah, it's been 2 decades now, and that's kind of the whole point about James Cameron. The decision behind Avatar is all about pushing a technology, and he actually created his own camera technology to make sure that the film is the way it is that we see on camera, and that's kind of why it's taken 20 years. The last film took about 10 years to make. Now we're kind of getting into the zone. The last one's 2022. But this is what's really interesting about it, is because James Cameron, even though he has made all of these advances in technology, he's actually made a stance about performative AI, because this is the big conversation in Hollywood at the moment, talking about artificial intelligence and talking about the technology and the use of it. And actually, before our screening on during the week, he actually made a video beforehand and spoke about how he used no performative AI in this, and he made sure to say that to all of the journalists there. So when we were at the premiere yesterday, of course, that was the main conversation. We wanted to talk about to the actors of what's their stance about AI.
I think he probably thinks there's a place for AI somewhere, maybe in special effects, to lower the cost of making a film like this. But I don't think he wants it anywhere near actors. He has so much respect for them. Go figure.
I love seeing Sigourney Weaver doing anything that she wants to do. Look, no AI, but of course lots of CGI. That first Avatar movie, if I remember correctly, was like the groundbreaker for 3D glasses in cinema. The second one, I think I watched it at home. Maybe that's why I didn't like it so much. Was it another 3D extravaganza? And is this one the same way?
Yeah. So the first, let's say the first section of Avatar, we do get to go into the whole 3D idea of it all over again. You are hit with the beautiful cinematography that James Cameron does, that you do expect from his films. It then does move into the storyline of it. Of course, we've seen Sam Worthington, Zoe Saldana return as well, and Sigourney Weaver, who, this is the beauty of technology, plays a teenager.
Excellent.
And so that's where CGI comes in to true form.
Yeah, fascinating for her.
I got round to that. Okay, good. Well, we need to watch it now, isn't it?
There we go. I've got you hooked.
It's a tease to get me in there.
And I mean, it's going to be huge, isn't it? I mean, all the previous two have been huge, haven't they? So presumably this third one will be
Exactly, yeah. So the very first film is the #1 box office film of all time. Following that is Avengers Endgame, and then the third is Avatar 2. So we're expecting big things at the box office, but that's kind of the time that we have existing.
So now tell me what this figure is. This is
2.9 billion.
Thank you. Thank you.
I was like, that's too many numbers there.
Is that the amount the first film grossed?
Is the first film,
in 2009.
That is huge.
Extraordinary. And the second film, that's The Way of Water in 2022. Let's have a look at that. How much did that gross? 2.3.
Which is 1.75, I'm just doing the sums in my head, billion pounds.
Excellent.
It says it over there.
You're good.
That is so much money, isn't it? That is extraordinary.
It's so much, and that's the whole point of James Cameron's work as well, is that the things that he's doing for the box office is monumental.
How much do they cost to make? Because obviously with the new tech, they cost a lot as well, don't they?
Yeah, a couple of $100 million, a couple of hundred.
It's not cheap, is it?
But as he said, if you want to invest your money, he said previously, if you want to invest a couple of $100 million into Avatar, you know you're going to get $1 billion back.
I think that's not a bad investment.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Value investment go up as well as down, remember that.
And maybe I'll go and see this one.
Yeah.
Tell us what else is out there, though, because we as soon as we get past the new year, we're into award season, aren't we? So is this the period when we get all the really good films coming out?
This is the exciting time. Now, earlier this week, the Golden Globes nominations were announced, and the main leader is One Battle After Another. And that came out in cinemas.
That was excellent.
No pointy ears.
Well, that's a good thing, because you're one of the rare people. It actually didn't do that well at the box office.
I went to the movies to see it too.
Oh,
what did you think of it?
I thought it was
I thought it was really good.
Excellent.
Really
Paul Thomas Anderson is back on top form, and the acting and Leo and the rest of them, fantastic.
Exactly. Well, the Golden Globes thought exactly that, so they're leading the way. They have 9 nominations at the Golden Globes, which is happening in January. But following that is Sinners, the Ryan Coogler film. Now, I didn't get to see this one yet. It's on my list. It's got 7 nominations, but it came out when I was on holidays, so unfortunately, couldn't see it.
Just get the red carpet occasion.
Exactly. But we do have some new films coming out. Marty Supreme, that is the one that Timothée Chalamet has been talking about a lot. It's about an aspiring ping pong champion. That's coming out on the 26th of December, and Sentimental Value as well, which was kind of the surprise nominations at the Golden Globes. That's a Norwegian comedy drama starring Stellan Skarsgård and Elle Fanning. That's out as well around Christmas, but that got 8 nominations at the Golden Globes.
Interesting.
Oh, fantastic. Oh, that's lots to look forward to. That's great. Do you love going to the cinema?
Yeah. It's a good way of spending a good few hours.
Yeah, rather than at home where you're not going to enjoy it as much.
Absolutely.
With inferior snacks. No doubt.
I watch films in stages as well. That's part of my problem because I've got a little one who always interrupts me, so I don't get to watch those. Yeah, I know. Don't even. I get criticised by friends for doing that, but it's the only way I can get through a movie sometimes.
Don't
to watch
worry.
it bits.
When I'm watching a couple of the TV shows, I do it on the treadmill because I'm like, I watch so many films at this moment. My day every day is watching film and TV shows, so I'm like, right, at least if I get my steps in.
Perfect. That's a really good tip. I'm in awe. Well, Debbie, lovely to see you, and thanks for talking us through.
Looking forward to your review
Things to look
as
forward
well.
to. Yes, 19th.
Thank you, Peter.
Thanks very much indeed. Do stay with us. We're going to be chatting space very shortly with the astrophysicist Dame Maggie Aderin-Pocock. Really looking forward to that. Yeah, stay with us.
If you have a picture in your head of how the global economy works, it probably looks a bit like this. Container ships, ports, goods transported around the world. This is globalization, the heartbeat of commerce around us, the invisible force keeping us supplied with essentials and trinkets. So what happens when you try to turn this world upside down? This is the inside story of how the world economy really works and what's really happening at the front line of Donald Trump's trade war.
Now, do you often think about the unfathomable depths of space, Kamali? You're thinking about it now, aren't you? I could tell by that look on your face. It's a bit mind-boggling,
It really
I'd say.
is.
But we've got someone here that understands it all, space scientist Dame Maggie Aderin-Pocock, and it's such a pleasure to have you here.
Morning,
Thank you
Dame
so much
Maggie.
for joining us. Now, as I understand it, you're delivering the Christmas lectures, or a couple of them, for the Royal Institution. Is that right?
Three.
Yes.
Busy.
Three.
And
I
it
think you
is.
recorded
It is.
one last
night,
right?
and I've got recording another one tomorrow.
And they go out around Christmas.
Yes, between Christmas and New Year.
Fantastic. And as I understand it, they're designed to get people inspired by the idea of space, and particularly young people as well. So give us a little bit of a sneak preview of some of the messages that you want to get out there.
Yes. Well, the theme of all three lectures is the search for life out there. And it's one of these fundamental questions that if you go back in time, every culture has asked. And so we're looking at, I build instrumentation. And so we're looking at a technology that allows us to search for life. And every so often we get a sort of, a tantalising, oh, is there life there? Wait, is it over here? And so we're investigating that. But how do we find out about not just the life within our solar system, the potential life in our solar system, but life on the planets going around distant stars? And so we take that journey. But it's wonderful to do. And the kids last night were brilliant. Just really good, such fun.
And I suppose that search, for the scientific purposes of it is important, but also it takes us to sort of a philosophical place about our place within the universe, right?
Yeah, true. Yes, and that's one of the things we explore as well, because it's wonderful looking at the evolution of our understanding of the universe. Because we used to think that we're Earth, we're the centre of everything. Yeah. I know, lots of hubris in our interpretation. But now we believe that we sit in a galaxy called the Milky Way. So, first of all, our local star is the sun. But all the stars we see in the night sky are suns like our sun, and they have planets going around them. And so we know that within our galaxy, there are approximately 300 billion stars. We're finding the planets going around some of those stars. In the whole of the universe, one of the things that Hubble told us is there are about 200 billion galaxies.
And when the numbers are so huge like that, I mean, it is actually mind-boggling.
But it's trying to make that, because it does feel sort of overwhelming and mind-boggling. So it's trying to bring it down to sort of bite-sized pieces so people can get sort of to grips with it. So we do all sorts of experimentation to talk about the number 1 billion.
But again, if you do want to look for evidence of life elsewhere, how do you do it when there's so much out there and it takes so long to get there?
Yes, well, see, and that's it. It takes light a finite time to get to us. So sometimes with our big telescopes, we're looking at things that maybe no longer exist.
You're looking back in the past?
Yes, they're time machines. And so we're looking back to the early universe in some cases, some 13 billion years.
Yeah, so this is an image from the James Webb Telescope, which I know that you've been involved in the design of, haven't you?
Yes, so I worked on the James Webb.
Yeah.
And I was building subsystems for some of their instruments.
So can you tell us what we're seeing with this image?
Yes. So this is an image which is, again, sort of looking back to the early universe. And you can see... actually, I don't know if you can see, but there are some galaxies there, but some of them are curved. That's because there is a very an object with lots of mass. And when you've got sort of lots of mass like that, it actually bends light. And so that's called gravitational lensing. As the light comes from the distant object, it comes round this massive object, and the light is bent around it. But also it's showing some of the earliest galaxies formed in the universe. And so, yes, so we can study this and get an understanding of how our universe has evolved.
Let's bring up some of the other pictures, Dame Maggie, while we keep talking, if we can. I think we've got one called Pillars of Creation.
That's beautiful.
It is.
Question then. How do we decide on the names of it? And we were joking in the break about S-Max being really boring, but this has obviously got a very thoughtful name.
Creative.
Yes,
yeah, right?
Yes. And the thing is, this area was first photographed back in the 1920s. Of course, then it was on photographic plate. And then we've been... so Hubble took images of it as well. But one of the things, the differences between Hubble and the James Webb is Hubble is a visible light, so the sort of things we see with our eyes, but James Webb is an infrared telescope. And so each time we take images of this, we just we have a different viewpoint. So I think there were sort of marks there where you can see sort of red hot areas, and that's where stellar formation. So it's a stellar nursery where new stars are being born. Yes, and the scale of that is huge. But yes, the naming. So I think that name comes from the Pillars of Creation. So back in the 1920s, and now we have sort of naming conventions in place, which make them a lot less fun.
Yes, there's another picture we've got as well, Rings of Nebula?
Yes.
Yeah.
The Ring Nebula.
Ring Nebula.
Yes.
So talk us through this.
Lovely. So a nebula is where new stars are formed, but the Ring Nebula is probably what happened here is stars are like us. They go through life cycles. So they're born, they live for a while, burning brightly, giving out lots of radiation, and then they die. Depending on the size of the star will depend on how they demise. And this is probably a star that went supernova, one of the brightest things in the whole universe. And it's when a star runs out of fuel, it starts collapsing in on itself, and then it sends lots of matter out into space. But the thing is, the beauty is, new stars are born out of that matter. And that's one of the things we discussed in the lecture, this life cycle of stars.
Maggie, look, in your work, it will be impossible to hear you speak and not be inspired to get involved and think about this at least.
I'm tempted and I'm terrible.
Join us.
How are you finding children, young people getting into the industry? Are they still as excited by the prospect of discovery?
I think they... And so one of the reasons I started doing science communication about 20 years ago is I was working as a space scientist, loving my job, but I couldn't get the next generation to come and join us. We were putting adverts out, but we weren't getting any takers. And I think it's because they don't really sort of get aware of what we do. And so, yes, I work on things like the James Webb Space Telescope, getting sort of glorious images like that. But most of my work is on Earth observation, using satellites to help us on our planet, looking at climate change, monitoring sort of photosynthesis and trying to feed the world, and disasters. When disasters happen, then a satellite can pass over and take images. And so it's showing the relevance of what we do. And so hopefully, I think we're turning a few heads.
Yeah.
And people really identify with that.
Yes, I think
but
so.
But also, there's a huge amount of movement in the space industry, isn't there?
Yes.
And plans to get man back on the moon again after this long hiatus as well. Does that help in inspiring kids?
I think it does.
Because they kind of can see physically things happening from Earth.
Although we do have a challenge, and that's because we have some great sci-fi dramas and things like that, and we have CGI. And so sometimes I go out and speak to kids, and I'll say, well, yes, when the first person lands on Mars, I say, oh, haven't we been there?
We've done that. Matt Damon went.
Yes, that's it. Because I've seen it all in CGI. And so it's trying to sort of separate the reality from the sort of the science fiction, but also pointing out that, the science fiction of today is the science of tomorrow. And so what we see out there, like someone landing on Mars, is going to happen, and it could be them. I'm hoping it's me, actually.
Where would you like to go?
That's been the dream of my life. It's the thing that's driven me throughout my life.
Yeah?
Well, yes. Actually, Interstellar would be nice. I like a challenge.
Those those commercial trips, don't they, up into the atmosphere? You could probably get a seat on one of those.
Yes.
Petitioning for Dame Maggie to get
I think the tickets are quite pricey.
I know, yeah. Maggie in space. Maggie in space.
We'll do a wet round.
Look, James Webb took sort of 30 years to develop, right? It's a long time. What's the next thing that we're going to be using to explore our...
It's quite interesting because we've got some fantastic ground-based telescopes. Vera Rubin is a survey telescope looking at many sort of millions of stars. But on top of that, we've got probes going to sort of various planets. And what's very interesting, and what we discussed in the Christmas lecture, is moons. Because we think about sort of the search for life, and we sort of go to planets like Mars, lots of rovers on Mars, but we're going to moons now as well. And so because many of these moons have an icy shell on the outside, but liquid water underneath.
Yeah.
And because we found life in places like the Mariana Trench, where we didn't think life was possible, it means they can live off thermal vents. And so there could be aliens on some of the moons of Jupiter and Saturn.
We've got to leave it there at that tantalising moment.
I think that just means you have to come back, Dame Maggie, at the stage, okay? So we'll have you back.
I'd love to.
Have a longer chat as well.
Really inspiring
really
stuff.
Good speaking to you. Thank you so
really
much.
Lovely to have you this
Lovely to see you in
morning. Thanks so
person as well. Thank you. All right, well, from...
Back down on Earth.
Yeah, no, shall I do this one? Space to spaghetti. And the Italians have a lot to shout about this week, right? Yes, Italian cuisine has been given UNESCO Heritage recognition. And not before time, I would say.
It's so interesting, isn't it? I didn't even know about this list. It's called the Intangible World Heritage List. And so Italian cooking has now joined the list, which I think is a great idea because, I mean, who doesn't love Italian food? But apparently there have in the past been individual foods like the French baguette apparently was on the list. And pizza from Naples has also been listed in the past, but this is Italian food in general.
So this is UNESCO's list, isn't it? It's not just delicious food that's on there. There are other sort of intangible things from communities and cultures around the world.
Albanian folk singing.
Yes.
Yeah. Portuguese boat building. I knew nothing about this. I think it's fascinating.
Did you write down coal?
Oh, no, I heard about that.
The eyeliner, yes, exactly. That's one that's on the list as well, that's of intangible value to those communities. It's fascinating. UNESCO do this, what is it, every year?
I think so, yeah. I think it is every year. I don't know. I think it is. I was guessing.
I'm told Yorkshire pudding's on there as well. These voices in my head tell me strange things.
Yeah, they're very helpful
very useful.
sometimes. Anyway,
very
it's
useful.
Interesting stuff. Now, we're going to talk about renting a flat share, which might seem commonplace for our younger viewers as they start their careers in big cities. But what about if you're in retirement?
Yeah, well, only 6% of pensioners currently live in shared accommodation, but the Pensions Policy Institute expects this to almost triple for the next 15 years. Well, joining us now is Nick Henley, who's co-founder of Cohabitas. Am I saying that rightly?
Correct, yeah.
So we're going to see an increase in older people going into flat shares. Just when I think about flat shares, I think about my student house and it just being a complete disaster area mess. It's not going to be like that for the old generation, or is it?
Well, it depends what happens. I think there's a lot of factors that have driven the situation as it is. Economic factors being one. Also change in marital status. If you look at the ONS stats, there's been a 55% increase in the number of people who are not married, either through divorce, separation, but also never married.
So would they then flat share for company or for financial reasons?
Very good question.
Or both?
We've asked all the people who use the site to say their main reason. And 75% of people mention that it is to do with financial reasons as the primary reason, but 25% say that it's a social factor. And in fact, we kind of started more on the social end of it through loneliness for older people, and realised that what we were trying to do actually affected many different age groups, different cohorts who are a little younger.
And you're quite specific then, are you, about what the type of accommodation, where it's located, or tell us about how it all works.
Not at all, not at all. It's just a platform, a meeting place for people, really. It's free to register and
but all
add a
older
listing.
people, is it? It's
Anyone over 40, only over 40. And I'll come back to why that is set up like that. You can come and register on the site, and you can do one of two things. You can either register to advertise a room to let in your own home primarily, although we do get some private landlords, and that's quite a distinct thing compared to other rental platforms. Or you can advertise yourself to find a flatmate to do what we call buddy up. Because one of the problems you confront when you're an older house sharer or someone who wants to get a room in a house share is that young people don't want to live with you.
Yeah.
I think another interviewer joked about this a few months back and said, well, who wants to live with their dad? And I said, well, it's mutual.
Yes.
It's both ways around. So the reason we started out was mainly around loneliness, but financial conditions are driving it, and that has had a big effect on it.
And those economic concerns will only worsen, won't they? There's a shortage of housing. The Labour government told us they're not going to meet their housing target of these 1.5 new homes being built. So we're going to have a shortage of housing continuing for at least the next Parliament, if not further. So, this could worsen, couldn't it?
It's debatable whether shortage of housing is the issue. It's particularly with what we're doing. We're interested in live-in house owners renting out a room in their home, and those homes exist. So what we have is really a problem of right-sizing, where a lot of older people who were able to buy their house are living in houses that are bigger than them. Right. Now, quite rightly, they want to stay in their homes, and one way to stay in your home, if you can't afford to stay there, is to rent out a room. Conversely, the other way around is a lot of people have not been able to buy or to have a share of a purchased house. They just can't do that. And the cohorts behind, in the 40 to 50 and 50 to 60 age group, are even less likely rather to be able to do so.
But what about the over 65s, or those who have retired? It's a worry, isn't it? It's having to find the rent through retirement. It's really tough.
It is. The costs of renting are far greater than owning your own home, and when you're younger, paying a mortgage, and later just paying your bills. Much greater, so over twice. If you're a single-person occupant as well, it's almost impossible. The main problem as you get older, I'm in my 60s now, is your earnings are not going to go up unless you're in some type of high-end business, and then of course you don't need to house share necessarily. So your earnings are not going to go up, but as the costs of rent increase, and indeed other living expenses increase, it does focus the mind. You start thinking about how am I going to afford this when I'm older. What will happen is that many of those people will fall into social housing if they're not able to look after themselves. Now, the government's making provision or increased provision, but I think we will see more sharing in private households for sure.
Yeah, it's a really interesting phenomenon and something I wasn't aware of at all. So thanks for coming in and telling us a little bit about it.
Not
at all.
All the best. Thank you.
Nick Henley, thank you.
All right.
Now, we've got lots coming up for you. We're actually going to be speaking to a fundraiser who lost her eye to cancer, as well as the president of Just Giving, and we're talking about the UK's generosity.
Yeah, stay with us.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Being a Sky News journalist. Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us?
Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office.
Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent. An enormous explosion has just come down. I think it was a monster's just landed in between us.
Hundreds and hundreds of people hoping to get north, ultimately to get to the United States. It's a border where they're not welcome, and yet they keep coming.
We saw snatch squads going in, grabbing people, taking them out and putting them into trucks and taking them away.
They make about 50 kilos of fentanyl a week. It's incredibly dangerous and toxic stuff.
There's been an upsurge in deaths. The fighting between the gangs is getting more and more vicious.
Is this now all your territory?
Yeah. The battlefield is outside the barricades, which is over there. This is much more like a normal town. It's really sending a clear message that Venezuela is eager for change. We've been crushed. Free from wherever you get your news. We are in the middle of a forest, in a jungle really, and they're attempting to keep these men alive. This is real, hardcore emergency medicine. The information on this could bring down the entire network, not just in Iraq and Syria, but across the world. Sky News, the full story first. Hundreds of thousands of people have been using the beast for years to traverse Mexico, but it is really dangerous. Many people have died riding it.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist. A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond. You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
Well, hello again. And the festive season is, of course, getting closer.
I had noticed.
We're kind of in it. And it still seems there's room for many of us to give to other people despite the cost of living crisis.
Yeah, that's right. 2025 has set a new record for generosity, with more than 18 million donations being made across 1 million fundraising efforts on Just Giving. And the city that they have seen as being the most generous is Leeds, UK's most generous according to their website.
Yeah, well, let's speak to the president of Just Giving, Pascal Harvey, and Hannah Korn, who completed an Ironman this year to raise money for ocular melanoma after losing her left eye to cancer. Hannah and Pascal, thank you so much for being with us this morning. We really do appreciate both of you. Why don't we start with you, Hannah? I mean, losing your eye and then completing an Ironman to raise money, it's just an incredible effort.
Thank you. So I lost my eye to ocular melanoma in 2019, and then in April 2024, I was unfortunately found out it had metastasized to my liver, and I was given 12 months to live from that point. And I just thought, what's the best way that I can do? What's the best thing I can do to kind of, thrive with this devastating news? And I thought I can take part in Leeds Ironman and raise money for a charity close to my heart at the same time.
Amazing. What an amazing
Well
cause. And how generous were people? Were you surprised by how much people were prepared to dig into their pockets and contribute towards your fund?
It was unbelievable. So I set a target, which I thought was a generous target of £2,000, and it was absolutely smashed. And we've raised just shy of £22,000 for Ocular Melanoma UK.
Oh, congratulations. That is quite extraordinary, isn't it? And Pascal, tell us how typical Hannah's experience is. How generous have we been over the last year in this country?
Yeah, I mean, every year we're blown away by just how generous people are across the UK, and this year is absolutely no different. As you said, there were some real standouts like Leeds, which ranks among the most generous cities of the world. But honestly, the biggest story is that generosity is everywhere. People all over the UK are going above and beyond to support causes close to their hearts.
And you'll know, perhaps, because you pay attention to these on this programme, that one of your competitor fundraising sites named another city across the Pennines as being the most generous. And I'm not here to have any competition between you guys.
It was Liverpool, in case you didn't know.
It was Liverpool.
It was.
It was on GoFundMe. Now, look, doesn't that just tell us, I guess, that the north of England is more generous than the south?
Yeah, and I guess also the...
trying to start a fight here, aren't you?
Being from Nottingham as well, I can sit right in the
Sorry,
middle.
Pascal, I completely spoke over you. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say that, I mean, the data that we've shown this, as you said, you know, over 1 million fundraising pages created on Just Giving this year with over 18 million donations, with Leeds being named as the most generous city based on the highest volume of donations per person on Just Giving. But you are right, because Edinburgh comes in next. So there you go.
Yes,
hey,
there is a trend, but it is it's really heartening, isn't it? And Hannah, were you surprised as well? Because a lot of people have really been struggling with the cost of living recently. Are you surprised at a time like this that people were prepared to pay? What does it tell you, do you think, about people in this country and their sense of generosity?
Well, I think I was completely overwhelmed and humbled by the fact that people were willing to get behind my story and really wanting me to succeed in my challenge. I'm not surprised at all that Leeds is the most generous city in the UK. You know, as you said, Northerners are great, just generally. But it's really humbling that still at this time where people are really, really struggling to put food on the table, that they are still willing to support people who have charities that are really, really close to the heart and know that the money that they donate will make a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Yeah.
Right, Hannah, congratulations again.
Yeah,
to you.
congratulations.
Thank you so much,
Hats
Ruins,
off.
and Pascal. Thank you very much for joining us, both of you guys. Enjoy the rest of your days.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, time for a bit of sport. Jackie is here, and Jackie, some startlingly large figures on the front of our newspapers today, and representing the cost of tickets for the World Cup.
You'd have to be feeling quite generous, sort of in favour of FIFA, if you want to kind of spend those. I mean, what is the most you would pay for a ticket to a gig or something like that, realistically?
I've thought about this, and one of the only things I would ever queue overnight for is a ticket for the World Cup final. But these prices...
But what would you pay, though?
These prices, I mean, I think I'd still be priced out.
I think my limit's like about 400 or 500. That'd be absolutely tip-top.
Over £1,000, I'd be devastated. I don't think I could do that, ever.
Yeah, so 3,000... If England gets to the final and you want to go, and you want to sort of ask for your ticket now, bid for your ticket now, £3,119, up to almost £7,000. Did I say 100? I meant to say 1,000.
You said 1,000.
£1,000, up to £6,000 and more just for the final. And if you're playing for a popular team like England, even for a group game, you're going to pay more than someone who's playing for a less popular team.
That's particularly cheeky.
Which is really cheeky.
Do we know how to calculate that as well?
Well, there must be some algorithm. I don't know how they calculated it, but, you know, figuring out what people will actually pay. I mean, it was 450 quid in Qatar for the World Cup final last time. And this is 30 times more than they charged for the Euros final 2 years ago. So, I mean, it's just like mind-boggling. And it's just like, who's going to pay this? Who's going to have, like, thousands of pounds
Super Bowl tickets
hanging around?
Well,
they must have based it on, like, Super Bowl tickets, I would say.
People are saying that it keeps the money in sport. It'll
but what it does is it will sponsor the sort of lesser nations when they're trying to develop football in those countries in terms of grants and things like that. It will, but you know. The World Cup's meant to be for the fans, right? And they can go and support their team. As Scotland fans, going to support their team for the first time since 1998 in a World Cup, and they're going to have to be shelling out if they want to follow all the matches. I mean, you must be talking like around $5,000.
And that's just for your tickets.
And that's just for your tickets, and that's not for your hotel and your flights and did a little. Anyway, fans were absolutely horrified. Exorbitant.
How much are tickets for the darts, Jackie?
Tickets for the darts? Good question, Anna. 50 quid, 60 quid, depending on where you're sitting. On a table, I think it might be 60. So you get somewhere to put your beer. Yeah, great night. It was the first night at darts last night, Ali Pali. Really, really good fun. Some fantastic costumes. People were having a lot of time. There was a lot of beer, obviously. Here's a fellow who I'm not sure how good a time you would have in that outfit, because honestly, how could you eat and drink?
Is it beefy, that what they called him?
I think the Santa Claus is easier and Elf. Anyway, Luke Littler was the main attraction last night. He is a defending champion. He has won 5 other major titles since winning that world title. And he's not 19 yet. He beat Darius Labanauskis last night. It wasn't super easy, but his average was 101.54, his 3-dart average. So pretty good.
Pretty good.
And I think, you know, he says he doesn't get nervous. But I think you would get nervous. You know, anyone would get nervous in that situation. You're defending. You don't want to go out first round. You want to be still there after Christmas. You know, he got it done. It was done. Your team played last night.
They did.
Were you watching avidly?
I dipped in for a bit. I've got to get up really early for this show.
Roger Federer was watching last night.
Really?
Yeah, he's not a Forest fan.
Not a Forest,
No, he wasn't a Forest fan. But he's a Basel fan, and he was there as Basel. He loves Basel. In fact, he used to train at the US Open in a Basel football shirt. Always. Anyway, they lost, sadly, for Roger Federer. They lost to Aston Villa 2-1. 8 wins out of 8 for Villa. Yuri Tielemans with the winning goal there last night. Also, Palace won and Forest won.
Yes.
2-1 away, which I think is the first time in about 30 years you won away in Europe.
I know, you tried to be sniffy about it.
I wasn't being sniffy about it.
Sniffy, and I said it's good to go away and win in Europe in midweek. I think that's a great result.
Yeah, don't look at me. I mean, yeah, no, sounds good to me.
It was a good result. Are we going to show that goal? No, we're not going to show that goal. Anyway.
What I'm enjoying about Igor Jesus' celebrations is Hadouken from Street Fighter, if anyone else has been wondering about what he's doing.
Good Forest knowledge. It wasn't such a good night, though, we should say, for the Scottish clubs. Rangers and Celtic did not have a good time of it in Europe last night, but everyone else did.
Yeah, they did.
Good.
Jackie, next hour?
Yeah, we'll see you again.
Yeah, some of the goals as well.
Got to figure out what you'd go to, what you would dress up as well.
Oh dear.
OK, I'll work on that. Top stories next.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
Hello, a very good morning. It's 9 o'clock. This is Mornings with Jones and Melbourne. I'm Anna.
And I'm Kamali. Thank you for starting your day with us. Here's how we're looking.
Flu cases are surging like never before. The NHS is likened to a teetering Jenga tower. The Health Secretary says doctor strikes will be the brick that breaks it.
The economy shrank by 0.1% in October as car production continued to feel the impact of that cyber attack on Jaguar Land Rover.
Britain answers NATO's warning. The Armed Forces Minister says the UK is drawing up plans to rapidly prepare the country for war.
Well, there's lots of talk recently about facial recognition technology being rolled out by police forces, but we've got some new information that suggests the tech has a racial bias.
And we'll be joined by Time magazine after they named the architects of AI as their Person of the Year.
Good morning and thank you for being with us. The Health Secretary Wes Streeting has warned resident doctors the next week's strike could be the Jenga piece that forces the NHS to collapse.
Yes, the health service is struggling to cope with a huge surge of superflu. The number of people in hospital has increased by more than half in just a week, and health bosses say there's no peak in sight. Well, let's find out a little bit more. Amanda is here. So we've got this combination of a huge number of flu cases and rising with the doctor strike planned for next week.
Yes, so the situation with flu clearly is pretty dire for the NHS. On average, every day last week, there were 2,660 patients in hospitals. Wes Streeting is saying that that could triple by Christmas in what he's describing as a tidal wave. And he's claiming that with the doctors' strike planned for next week, starting on Wednesday, due to last for 5 days. That'll be a challenge unlike anything we've seen since the pandemic. Some pretty striking words from him. Let me read you a quote from an article he's written in the Times today. He says, "The whole NHS team is working around the clock to keep the show on the road, but it's an incredibly precarious situation, and Christmas strikes could be the Jenga piece that collapses the tower." Now, clearly he's really using this to pile pressure on the BMA to attempt to get them to call off these strikes. They have said that they'll put a new offer from the government to their members online, but that's not going to be, the result of that won't come out until Monday. And of course, the strikes are due to come out on Wednesday. But clearly really trying to kind of win the emotional argument with the electorate and piling the pressure on in terms of the Christmas message. And that's something we heard a little bit from Georgia Gold, the School Standards Minister, speaking to us earlier as well.
We have listened, and we are putting more support in place, more training in place, and these are some of the things that the junior doctors have asked for. And we are appealing directly to junior doctors to support the NHS over Christmas, because we don't want people's operations to be cancelled. We know the pressure that the NHS is under, and it's so important that we are supporting patients at this time, and we're deeply grateful for the NHS staff who work so hard every single day.
So what's the offer that Wes Streeting has given to the BMA?
So effectively, they're saying they'll change the law to prioritise UK-trained doctors over foreign medics who are able to come in and compete for those training places. And they're also creating many more training places, so it'll be easier to get a consultant training programme position, as well as giving them paying effectively for their exams that they have to take and membership of the Royal Colleges they have to be members of if they go on to become a consultant. And all of that does add up to thousands and thousands of pounds. So in a way, that is a kind of financial offer on the table for the government. However, senior members of the BMA sort of saying, well, actually, this is all very well, but our main offer is about general pay. We want to see 26% because they believe that their pay has been eroded so much over many years. For the government, that's pretty embarrassing because they came into office promising to kind of end this carousel of strikes that we saw in the NHS under the previous government. They gave them a big offer, nearly 30% last year. Clearly, they don't want to be seen to keeping on coming back for more again and again. Wes Streeting wants a moral high ground. He's trying to say, well, you can call off the strikes over Christmas, I'll let you have them in January. But clearly for the BMA, it's precisely because it's such a kind of fraught time at the moment that they do appear to be getting some movement from the government. So we'll see who bends first.
Yeah, we're going to find out Monday, what the BMA members will choose to do in the strike. I think it was set for Wednesday, wasn't it?
Absolutely,
next week?
yeah, for 5 days.
So it's right on the edge, right on the cliff edge. And the government have I mean, in some ways, let themselves get into this position by finally, at this point, offering that agreement of the extra places for doctors trained here that the BMA have been calling for quite a long time. So some would say that the government have some questions to answer as to how they let it get to this cliff edge. They'll be hoping they'll be able to avert it now, but we will find out in a couple of days' time, won't we?
Find out on Monday, absolutely. In the meantime, those flu cases rising. We'll keep track of that as well. Amanda, thanks very much indeed.
Thanks, Amanda.
Thank you. Now, the UK economy unexpectedly shrank in October. This is according to the latest official figures. Paul Kelso, our business and economics correspondent, has been keeping track of them. Hi there, Paul. Not good news.
No, very soft numbers, I think, is the way the trade will be describing these. The figures for GDP, the output of the economy in October, just a single month, can be revised. That's the usual caveat. Contracted 0.1%, so 0.1%.
That's unexpected, wasn't it?
Unexpected. The consensus was that there'd be about 0.1, 0.2% of growth.
That's not a big difference between those two figures, but psychologically,
absolutely, and some of it's actual, although it's well within that. Those figures could be revised away. The figure, perhaps more than just the 1 month we look at, is the 3-month trend, and that also, if we go back 3 months from October, was a contraction of 0.1%. So that is even more worrying, because 1 month can be an oddity. 3 is harder to dodge. It's the first 3-month trend contraction since the end of 2023. So it shows the economy slowing down, possibly even finding reverse gear. But there was growth in the first half of this year. It dipped away. Part of the one big driver of that contraction was the cyber attack on JLR, Jaguar Land Rover, big cut in manufacturing of cars. Some of it came back in October, but not back to where it was, so that contributed to that slowdown. We have had a response from the Treasury, just a spokesperson, not from a minister this morning. They've said we are determined to defy the forecasts on growth and create good jobs so everyone is better off, while also helping us invest in better public services. They also point to some of the measures taken in the budget, £150 off energy bills, and long-term measures, planning reform, Heathrow and Gatwick runways, Sizewell C. None of those projects are going to be finished, for some of them, for a decade or more. So there's a long-term bet from Labour that isn't delivering the short term. It seems like now almost certain that next week, when the Bank of England meets on Thursday next week for its final decision on interest rates of the year, feels certain there'll be a quarter-point cut now, at least. The markets had already seen that as a overwhelmingly likely. A slowing economy makes it feel like that becomes close to a certainty as they try and stimulate a bit of growth.
Well, and that's the thing, is that because they're going for growth as the only way out of this, how much harder do figures like this make it, or will they just see this as a blip and they're still pushing ahead?
Well, it's October, so it's pre-budget. A lot of talk about pre-budget uncertainty.
Was there a certain stasis,
absolutely,
if you like?
Particularly, I think we're in October, we were in that blizzard of almost daily trails and leaks and what have you. So the next numbers we'll be for November. Budget was the end of November. That was peak budget speculation, so that's likely to come. When they get December, people spend a bit more money. That typically happens at Christmas anyway. But we're looking at the last quarter of this year perhaps being flat. Now, is it going to rebound as we get into next year? Well, interest rate cuts will help. The government will certainly hope so. But a lot of this is going to be down to how well households feel, how they feel about, frankly, spending, how much resilience there is. When we know taxes are going up, if not in the rates, certainly the thresholds mean people are going to be paying more tax. There are various other pressures on household finances. Inflation is expected to ease, so that should get easier, but it does feel like an economy that certainly didn't get the kind of injection of energy from the budget that certainly business was hoping for. And we'll have to see where it goes from here. The Tories say all of this is down to Labour's economic mismanagement.
Well, Anna is going to be speaking to the Conservatives a little bit later on this hour and put some of that to them.
Cool,
right, Paul, thank you so much for that. Well, the government today have announced an increase in funding for special educational needs. I spoke to the Minister for Education about that just a short time ago. Our education reporter, Anjum Pirbakos, has joined us for a bit more on this. So, Anjum, £3 billion offered. The Minister, I put the questions that you asked to her, and she said that it's going to be protected in local government. They have to spend it on SEND. Just tell us about their idea and what they're wanting to do with this money.
So the idea is that 50,000 places will be created for children with those special educational needs and disabilities, and the idea is that they are created in mainstream schools. So where you've had previously parents having to travel for a specialist provision, that hopefully will become localised with this new funding and this new kind of initiative. What we need to also consider, though, in the grand scheme of things, is £3 billion sounds like a lot of money, and it is a lot of money. But the need is 1.7 million children in England alone have got special educational needs and disabilities. And when you factor in that actually there are about 24,000 schools in the country, suddenly that money doesn't seem to be a greater figure when you start breaking it down. And what we've had this morning is, once the announcement was made, that other unions have also said, like the National Association of Head Teachers in particular, has said that they really welcome this announcement. They think it's a really step in the right direction. But they want to know how it's going to be implemented, how is it going to be facilitated in a work sector and a workforce which is dwindling and diminishing and hemorrhaging teachers. Academically, by academic year on academic year, where are these specialist teachers going to come from? Where is the resourcing and where is the implementation and kind of facilitation, if you like, of that specialist teaching background in those specialist places which are going to be, up and down the country? So I think it's fantastic in principle, but for me, it's all about what happens next.
The detail.
Yeah, absolutely.
The detail.
What happens on the ground.
And is it right that free schools are not going to go ahead? Is that right?
So there's talk about free schools and also alternative provision that were going to go ahead. They might be minimised in light of this new announcement today because the money is invested in mainstream schools. And I think the principle behind this announcement is that mainstream schools would be the hub and would be the centre in each locality, so that parents wouldn't have to travel, but also that the children would feel included, and it's an inclusive kind of holistic view of education and including those children.
Interesting. All right, Anjum, really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah,
We're getting the white paper in the new year.
Early new year.
Early new year. I couldn't pin it down on exactly when, but it's coming in the early new year. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
for
We'll
that.
be talking to you about that when it does come out. Thank you. Another whistleblower has told Sky News that the UK's asylum system is allowing people to fall off the radar undetected and unchecked.
Yeah, in an exclusive interview, a contractor that works in the system said that people are absconding from asylum hotels on a weekly, if not daily basis, at a time when the government has promised to tighten the system up. Well, that insider sat down with our national correspondent, Tom Parmenter.
He met us after work, the end of another shift inside the UK's asylum hotel system. We've changed his voice because he wants to remain anonymous.
We actually had an absconder today from the hotel. When somebody gets to about a week away from the hotel, they're processed as an absconder. Nothing really happens there. A notification is sent to the Home Office.
So there's no check?
No check.
They disappear?
Yeah. It's at least weekly. Most of the time it can be daily.
When someone gets a decision on their claim for asylum and they're rejected, what happens?
The resident is sent a letter from the Home Office explaining to them that their asylum claim has been refused. They get given a date that they need to move out by. You would expect immigration enforcement to go to the hotel to pick these people up. There's no further steps from there to identify where the person has gone after they've left the hotel, to collect them and have them deported. They know that they've got their asylum failed anyway. What have they got to lose by just going underground and working illegally and just getting by for as long as they can? They can do whatever they want because no one knows what address they do live at, who they are. They're just completely invisible within society. For those people to freely be allowed, undetected and unchecked on the streets of this country is terrifying. And I almost suspect that people know that once they get onto British soil, they're here to stay. They can't be removed. They won't be removed.
This points to a broken system that is losing both people and the confidence of the British public.
I understand a lot of people are afraid, but if there's those things in place where we can monitor who is around, then everybody can feel a lot safer.
Shabana volunteers at this community kitchen in Greater Manchester. She says that every week they see more people who have fallen out of the asylum system.
If people are coming into the UK and we don't know who they are and they're just disappearing, crime rates are going to go up. Slavery is going to go higher. Child exploitation is going to be more exposed. A lot more is going to happen where people are going to be at so much risk, but they are too afraid to go to the authorities because they are scared of being deported to a country where their lives could be at risk.
And it creates tension in the UK's communities.
Absolutely, yes, it is doing.
The government says it will close asylum hotels, scale up removals and address what's drawing illegal migrants to the UK. A spokesperson said nearly 50,000 people with no right to be in our country have been removed, and enforcement arrests to tackle illegal working are at the highest level in recent history. A dedicated team in the Home Office works with police across government and commercial companies to trace absconders. Failure to return to a hotel can also lead to asylum claims and support being withdrawn. They are taking a tougher stance, but this is a dysfunctional system that is still losing people every day. Tom Parmenter, Sky News.
Just more exemplary reporting from Tom Parmenter. You can scan that QR code, or the one that was just on screen anyway, to watch Tom's full report. Of course, we'll play it out through the day. And just to take a moment to speak about the situation in Ukraine, the diplomacy is moving on, as it always is. We find ourselves at another really significant moment now where the Ukrainians have submitted their own suggested peace plan. If you remember a couple of weeks ago, maybe last month, wasn't it, that the Americans and Russians put forward this 28-point plan. The Ukrainians have now finally come back with their own 20-point plan. We don't have all the details, but there's some talk about there being a referendum about some territorial concessions. We don't know how much their army will be reduced to or whether they'll get NATO membership. But the Ukrainians have taken the initiative in trying to get this sorted out. Now, the diplomacy will continue. We've had Keir Starmer meeting the members of the E3, the leaders of France and Germany this week. He's meeting with the Belgian Prime Minister today in Downing Street to try and get funding released from Belgium to support Ukraine. And the US is said to be sending a delegation over to Europe to discuss that Ukrainian peace plan.
So lots of movement there. And in the meantime, we heard this really stark warning, didn't we, from Mark Rutte yesterday, the Secretary General of NATO, warning about the prospect of war. And he put it in really stark terms. He said, we are Russia's next target and we are already in harm's way. And you sort of wonder why he's saying that now. And you get the feeling that perhaps it's partly in response to Donald Trump accusing Europe of being weak and not ready for war and not stepping up in terms of its military preparedness around the war in Ukraine. So it's partly about a message to European people. You do need to spend money on defence, but also getting people ready psychologically as well. Yeah, and we've seen that again. The UK are reflecting that as well. The Armed Forces Minister, Al Kans, has said the UK is rapidly developing plans to prepare the whole country for a possible outbreak of war. So we're seeing some of that rhetoric here as well.
And I wonder how people feel about it. And I mean, I put it to you, and I think about this quite often myself, that sense that there is war not far away from us. What does that do to how we feel here, and how prepared can one get oneself psychologically to be able to deal with something like that?
Mark Rutte talked about how he's talking about the prospect of potential war on a scale not seen since our grandparents and their parents' generation. So it's something that we're not used to, and it's quite shocking to hear it being talked about.
Yeah,
really,
it's unusual rhetoric for us, for this generation, but it is something that this generation now has to face.
We are going to be talking a little bit about the latest figures on the economy that came out this morning in a moment. We're going to get the Tories' view on those, so do join us after the break.
If you have a picture in your head of how the global economy works, it probably looks a bit like this. Container ships, ports, goods transported around the world. This is globalization. The heartbeat of commerce around us. The invisible force keeping us supplied with essentials and trinkets. So what happens when you try to turn this world upside down? This is the inside story of how the world economy really works and what's really happening at the front line of Donald Trump's trade war. The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
Now, the West Bank is just one of many flashpoints between Israel and Palestine, but it's one that's hard to cover as journalists. It's rare that Israeli settlers are willing to speak to the media.
Indeed, but our Middle East correspondent Adam Parsons has been able to do just that. He's been to a valley in the West Bank and spoke to Amishav.
According to international law, Amishav has no rights at all to this land. It belongs to other people, to Palestinians who've harvested olive groves here for generations. But Amishav says those people have no claim, that the word of the Bible trumps anything else. Over coffee, he spells out his belief. There's no sense of doubt or compromise.
The people of Israel are returning to their land, and that is the law, that is justice, that is the right thing to do.
Amishav says he is a peace activist, but he insists those who oppose the settlers will be met with force.
We are not afraid and not worried, and anyone who raises a hand against the people of Israel, we will cut off that hand. As a state, we have tanks, we have planes, we are very strong.
There is a stark contrast here. Amishav and his family project a traditional, unthreatening image, but the outpost they've created is illegal, part of a pattern that is raising tensions here.
And do scan the QR code to watch that full report, worth doing. And not long after that sit down, the interview does take a bit of a turn when Amishav takes issue with Adam's line of questioning. So do check that out using that QR code.
Worth a watch on our YouTube channel. Now, Anna, have you ever jumped out of an aeroplane?
I certainly haven't.
No? Would you?
No.
Well, you definitely won't after seeing this.
Yeah, this is extraordinary, these pictures.
I'm glad, OK.
I know, I genuinely feel slightly sick watching this. This is in Australia, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. A skydiver, as you can see, leaving the aircraft. His mate there manages to get away cleanly, but poor bloke gets his parachute stuck.
Yeah, and he's there 15,000 feet in the air. And I was just looking this up, actually. We do know he was OK, but apparently he managed to disentangle himself. He had a specialised tool called a hook knife.
Wow.
So he managed to disentangle himself, and he did manage to land safely with just minor injuries.
With his reserve parachute, I guess. I mean, like, presence of mind, having the tool on you as well.
Thinking straight in that moment, not panicking. My goodness. Anyway,
glad he got down
he's all
safely.
right. Yeah.
And I will never be jumping out of a plane. I've seen that.
No, I don't think I will either. Stay with us. We're going to be talking in a moment to Time magazine about their 2025 Person of the Year, and it's perhaps not what you'd expect.
No, it's not. Stay with us. Time magazine have released who is the Person of the Year. The recent winners, you may remember, include Donald Trump, Taylor Swift as well, of course, Vladimir Zelensky, as well as Elon Musk.
This year, however, the award has been given to the architects of AI. The 2025 award celebrates the rise of artificial intelligence, and it's one of the covers that it features a number of key industry leaders. So a really interesting choice. We can speak now, actually, to Billy Perigo, who's a tech correspondent at Time magazine. Very good morning to you. Thanks so much for joining us. So why this choice of not just one single individual, but a group of people in a growing industry?
Yeah, morning. Thanks for having me. So Time's Person of the Year is a recognition rather than an award. It's a recognition of the individual or the group of people who've had the biggest impact on the year. And this year it became very apparent that artificial intelligence as a whole was a hugely influential force on the year. It's basically holding up the entire US stock market. Hundreds of millions of people around the world are now talking to chatbots every day, both for personal matters and their work lives. And it's unclear where the future leads. Do we have thinking machines that are going to prevent humans from working in jobs and grow the economy 5 times over, as Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, who I interviewed for the story, proclaimed? Or are we on the brink of a massive market crash that leads to devastation on the same level as the global financial crisis or potentially the Great Depression of the 1930s? We just don't know. And that's kind of why we decided that this story was too broad to be told through a single individual, as Person of the Year traditionally is, and why we felt that a globe-trotting story that told the story of how this technology worked, how it came about, what its risks are, was the appropriate way to tell the story this year.
But I appreciate your clarification of language as well, that the magazine rewards for recognition of the thing rather than awarding it. You're not choosing whether or not this is good for humanity or not, and we'll come on to some of that. Let's, if I can, Andy, in the gallery, can you bring up that cover where they're sitting on the girder, and we can get Billy to talk us through who's on there, because this is fascinating. Billy, give us, many people sort of recognise this image from, I said earlier, the 1930s of those construction works. I'm not sure it's from the 30s. Billy, do you know when that original image of those guys sitting there with their lunch on the girder was shot, and who's on this girder?
I actually don't know when it was photographed. I would assume around the 1920s when they were.
I'm going to use AI to look it up.
You keep talking, Billy, while Anna checks the internet.
So we have Mark Zuckerberg on the left, CEO of Facebook, Lisa Su, the CEO of AMD, who is a large microchip manufacturer, Elon Musk, who owns an AI company alongside many other famous companies, including Tesla and SpaceX. In the middle, we have Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, who was the kind of set-piece interview for this story. NVIDIA, of course, the first $5 trillion company who makes the microchips that power the vast majority of the AI revolution. Next to him is Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, creator of ChatGPT, which was the breakout chatbot that really kick-started the AI revolution in 2022. And next to him is Demis Hassabis, British, CEO of Google DeepMind, longtime evangelist for AI and what he calls artificial general intelligence, which is this hypothetical future technology that can not only do your menial tasks for you via a web interface, but can make new scientific discoveries, etc. Next to him is Dario Amodei, CEO of Anthropic, the maker of the chatbot Claude, which is a kind of cult favorite AI tool in Silicon Valley and increasingly among enterprises globally. Next to him is Fei-Fei Li, who is a computer scientist at Stanford University, who's called the godmother of AI.
Brilliantly done and brilliantly remembered there, actually. And Kamala, you were quite right. 1932, construction workers having their lunch on a steel beam of the RCA building. Just looked it up. But Billy, tell us about how unusual or not it is for Time not to recognise just one individual, but more than one. Is this a first?
It's not a first. It's happened several times before. So in 1986, we recognised our first machine of the year, which was the personal computer, which is really a recognition of how technology is going to change the future. It proved remarkably prescient, I think. In 2006, we featured you as Person of the Year. that was a story about the impact that the internet and digital communities would have on the future. And so that was a probably our most expansive pick ever. I believe 6 billion people at the time. And even in more recent years, we've had the Silence Breakers. That was in 2017, which recognized the Me Too movement and the women behind it speaking up about sexual harassment and assault. And what we called the Guardians in 2018, they were a group of journalists who were fighting around the world for truth and against autocracy and authoritarianism and against disinformation.
I mean, a topic that we were discussing just this very morning on the number of journalists killed and jailed around the world. So on that good, you've got all these people who are involved in AI. Do they run sort of the gamut from the evangelists to those who are critical of it as well? And does that feature within this topic? Because as you've pointed out in your answers to us, Billy, not everyone is completely sold on AI's, I guess, utility to make humanity better.
Yeah, that's very true. So what I would say is this year's choice isn't actually just these 8 individuals. These are some of the people who have driven AI into daily life and the wider economy most significantly. But really what the choice recognizes is everyone who has made artificial intelligence into the kind of globe-spanning technology and artifact that it is today. And the story does talk not just about the CEOs and the industrialists, but also the people who are worried, the people who have sometimes suffered very tragic consequences. My colleague Andrew Chow, my co-author on the story, interviewed the parents of Adam Rain, this California teenager who very tragically died by suicide earlier this year after having long, detailed conversations with ChatGPT in which he discussed suicidal ideation, and the bot didn't crucially point him in the right direction. It encouraged him to hide marks of self-harm, allegedly from his parents. And that is a very real and exemplifying case of the way that these chatbots, which, by the way, even the people building them don't quite understand how they work, can lead to tragic consequences when hundreds of millions of people around the world are talking to them. We also spoke to economists who are worried that the US stock market, which is kind of running on wild highs at the moment after a year of major boom time, might be teetering on the edge of a precipice. So the story kind of not only speaks to the people who are making it happen, the CEOs, but also tries to zoom out and take stock of this historic moment and bring in the criticism as well as the optimism.
Yeah, so interesting and sparking so many conversations as well. But just finally, I really wanted to get a little insight into how the whole selection process works. I mean, who decides this? Is it a big team who come in with their own particular favourites and they argue it out? How do you decide who gets recognised in this way?
Yeah, it's one of the coolest parts of the year in the newsroom. We have a meeting every autumn, every September, October, where the entire newsroom comes together. We pitch people who we believe should be the person of the year in advance, and then we hash it out. We have arguments. There's a lot of disagreement, and then
can you
after
tell us who
that,
came close?
So the people you might expect were discussed in that meeting. We publish a shortlist every year. I think that this year's one is going to come out soon. Like, for example, Trump was mentioned in that meeting quite obviously, and we discussed.
Putin mentioned?
Now you're putting me on the spot. I cannot remember. But we have big discussions every year about who should be person of the year, and really there is a good argument for many people to be person of the year every year. And what I would say is, in this story, Trump is a central character, as is Xi, the president of China, because AI has become a matter of geopolitics. And so it's not just the tech CEOs, it's also the politicians who are turning this into a new arms race, a new Cold War, essentially.
Really interesting stuff.
Yes, so interesting. And so much that sparks, so much debate that sparks as well.
We could talk about this all morning, but we're going to just leave it there. But Billy, really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Very
and
much.
Congratulations on the cover. Another excellent one. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Now then, back here, we're going to be focusing on the daughter of a grandfather now who was fined for spitting out a leaf. She has called the penalty a total disgrace.
Yeah, this is interesting, this one. Roy Marsh, who was 86, was fined £250 by council officers in Skegness in Lincolnshire after he spat out a leaf which he said blew into his mouth. I mean, on the face of it, that sounds absurd,
yeah,
but the detail is there.
Well, he says that, he got some beach grass, is how he described it, flew into his mouth. He said he spat it out immediately and then got a tap on his shoulder and was told by environmental enforcement officers working on behalf of the council that he was being issued with a fine. Yeah, I don't know what they have to say for themselves and how they explain it, but certainly it does sound like quite a lot of money when you've had something blown in your mouth.
It comes on the back of another individual being fined by another council for similar incident a couple of weeks ago as well. I mean, as his daughter said, very upset about that decision, and get your views on that and whether or not you think that's an appropriate penalty for a person who had a leaf in his mouth to get fined 250 quid.
Yeah, it's a lot, isn't it?
It is.
Lots coming up for you in a moment. We're going to be speaking to the human rights non-profit organisation, Liberty, about police forces lobbying for what they say is a biased facial recognition system.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up being a Sky News journalist. Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent.
An enormous explosion that's just come down. I think it was a monster just landed in between us.
Hundreds and hundreds of people hoping to get north, ultimately to get to the United States. It's a border where they're not welcome, yet they keep coming.
We saw snatch squads going in, grabbing people, taking them out and putting them into trucks and taking them away.
They make about 50 kilos of fentanyl a week. It's incredibly dangerous and toxic stuff.
There's been an upsurge in deaths. The fighting between the gangs is getting more and more vicious. Is this now all your territory?
Yeah.
The battlefield is outside the barricades, which is over there. This is much more like a normal town. It's really sending a clear message that Venezuela is eager for change. We're being crushed. Free from wherever you get your news. We are in the middle of a forest, in a jungle really, and they're attempting to keep these men alive. This is real, hardcore emergency medicine. The information on this could bring down the entire network, not just in Iraq and Syria, but across the world. Sky News, the full story first. Well, hundreds of thousands of people have been using the beast for years to traverse Mexico, but it is really dangerous. Many people have died riding it.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist. A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
A historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
Traveling is not just about the destination. It's also about how you get there. Fly Emirates, fly better. better. Thank you.
Now, the use of facial recognition technology by the police is already proving controversial. Only last week, it was announced that police forces will be increasing their use of the tech. A 10-week consultation is now being launched, which includes plans for there to be a new regulator.
Yeah, but now reports in The Guardian suggest that police forces successfully lobbied to use a version of the technology which is known to be more biased against women, children and people from ethnic minorities. So let's get more on this. We're joined in the studio by Ruth Ehrlich, who's head of policy and campaigns at the human rights non-profit group Liberty. We referenced The Guardian there, but it's Liberty's research as well, isn't it? So tell us a little bit about this particular facial recognition technology and what your concerns are about it.
So facial recognition technology is essentially a tool that allows the police to scan your face as you walk down the street. It captures the images of everyone who walks past it. Now, there are no real overarching safeguards or regulations in place that control how and when the police can use this technology. So while we're welcoming the fact that the Home Office is now running a consultation to decide what kind of regulation should be there, it comes alongside the rollout of further facial recognition technology. So what we would really want to see is the Home Office and the police to stop using the technology until those guardrails are in place and can keep people safe.
Just to stop it entirely until the 10-week consultation is complete?
To stop rolling it out further.
Right. Talk to us about the bias that has been found in it, because that's what's so interesting about this bit of tech, that it's already been found to have a bias against minority groups, against women and against children.
Yeah, it's really shocking. And we've known for a long time that the use of facial recognition technology is much more likely to misidentify people of colour, particularly black people, women. And the data published by the Home Office last week pointed to evidence of racial bias. And it's obviously distressing to hear that the police have continued and in fact lobbied to continue using the technology in that way, despite it being discriminatory. And I think that really points to the need for overarching safeguards.
Do we know if the police knew that there was bias within the system? Because but the police, to be clear, think that this is groundbreaking. I mean, the policing minister has described the technology as the biggest breakthrough since DNA matching.
So Liberty Investigates, which is Liberty's investigative journalism unit, found that the National Police Chiefs Council knew that the algorithm and the way it was being used meant there was racial bias, said that it needed to be changed, and then police forces successfully lobbied to going back to using the algorithm in a way that has that really intense racial bias in it, which is obviously really concerning. But there are other misuses of the technology. So just last week, it was uncovered that children as young as 12 were on police watch lists and were therefore being looked for by facial recognition technology. Now, those children's parents don't know they're on those watch lists. We don't know why they're on those watch lists. On the adult watch list, it's not just people who are suspected of having committed a serious offence. It's often people who have been victims of crime, witnesses to crime. And that's why we want some really common sense safeguards that mean that the police can only use this technology in the most serious circumstances.
Let's be super clear, you're not saying you don't want the technology to be rolled out at all?
So what we want is common sense safeguards. And what that looks like is for the police to be able to use the technology only if, for example, there is an imminent risk to people's safety, if the police are looking for a missing child or a missing person, or indeed someone's suspected of committing a serious offence.
OK. Well, Ruth Ehrlich from Liberty, I really appreciate you coming in and being with us, and we'll keep a close eye on this story on this show, and we'll speak again soon.
Thanks very much indeed. Thank you. So I think now we can talk to the Tories. We've had a few problems with communications with them this morning, but Richard Fuller, the Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury, I believe joins me now. There you are. We've been trying to get through to you for a while, so apologies for the wait. We don't have very much time now, unfortunately, but I did want to get your reaction to today's GDP figures, which showed that the economy contracted in October by 0.1%. Unexpectedly, it was expected to rise a little bit. What's your reaction to that?
Well, that expectations point is an important point not to miss, because this is worse than people anticipated. But it is also the third in a series of trends of growth getting lower, and now we're in a shrinking economy. And that's a very bad place to be just before we end the year. It's been a bad year for the economy. And a lot of that responsibility rests with the Chancellor. She sowed enormous amounts of doubt and confusion ahead of her budget this year. And of course, last year, she whacked businesses with £40 billion of taxes. So these are the consequences of the Chancellor's decisions, I'm afraid.
Well, I'm sure a lot of people would like a lot faster growth, but it's not all bad, is it? The UK is expected to be the second fastest growing economy in the G7 this year. Plus, there's widespread expectation that the Bank of England will lower the base rate of interest next week as well. So it's not all bad, is it?
Well, I think it's fair that we'll have to wait and see what the Bank of England does, but the US Federal Reserve cut interest rates this week, so there's probably indication there of what might happen. But the reality on the ground, not a forecast, but the reality on the ground is the economy is shrinking, and a large part of the reason for that is if you tax businesses too much, if you tell working people that you're going to tax them to put more money onto benefits, if you put more regulations on business, if you don't create an environment where people feel if they make efforts that they can share in those rewards, you're not really going to get the right trajectory of growth. I'm afraid the difference between the Conservative Party and the Labour Party is the Labour Party believe the answer to economic growth rests with the government. We believe it's about letting people free to make their decisions to invest and create new businesses and create new jobs.
You were a prominent supporter of Brexit, but some estimates put the cost of the economy of that now at between 6 to 8% of GDP. We've seen the Liberal Democrats now calling for a new customs union to be negotiated. What would your reaction be to that? Would that be good for the economy, do you think?
I think it'd be very bad for the economy. If we're looking for part of the world where economic growth is as bad as we are, perhaps even worse, it would be within the European Union. The European Union has over-regulated itself. It's got a business model that isn't likely to deliver growth so that our children and grandchildren can have a better future. What we should be doing is charting our own course, and that's what leaving the European Union enables us to do, and to create the environment, our own economy, that has the level of taxation that's consistent with economic growth and the level of effort and return for people to go out and work hard, that means that people want to contribute. And that's really in our own hands. It's up to the Prime Minister today and the Chancellor to start using those powers for the betterment of the British people, not looking backwards to say if we tied ourselves again to the EU, would that be the answer? Because clearly it's not.
OK, well, Richard Fuller, we are out of time.
Okay.
Apologies
so much
for it to be so short, but at least we got you on in the end. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
Let's bring Jackie in for a look at some of the sports.
Good morning again.
How are you?
Yeah, good. I don't know, while we were talking, you probably didn't have a chance to have a look at it, but Arne Slot has been talking at the same time this hour and did his news conference ahead of their Brighton match at the weekend on Saturday. And obviously all the questions about Mo Salah. I don't know if you've seen the back page of The Sun today, but there's a sort of secret squirrel. Mo Salah's been meeting with Jordan Henderson, who's the former Liverpool captain, who left Liverpool to go to Saudi Arabia and play for Al Ettifaq for a few months. And the two seem to be deep in conversation. We don't know what it's about because it's a secret meeting, but it's very suggestive. Anyway, so he was asked all about Salah. What are you going to say to him? Are apologies needed? One of the things he did say was, I see no reason to not want him to stay, but, I just need to talk to him now. Arne Slot's now finished his news conference, but this is what he said.
We've spoken a lot in the last week after the Sunderland game. I think there have been a lot of conversations between his representatives and our representatives and him, between him and me, after the Sunderland game. And today I will speak to him again.
And I think journalists asked him in multiple different ways, what are you going to say? What's going to happen? Is there going to be an apology? And he managed to deal with it without really answering the question.
Well, it seems as if something has moved on. So I don't know if you guys saw his interview in midweek after the European game when he talked about...
Slot or...
Yeah, Slot. And there needs to be an approach from the Salah side as well, that, things... Not quite an apology, but something had to be said from that camp to make Arne Slot want to have that conversation with him. And from what I can hear from him saying there, it seems as if it's like politics. The two sides have come closer together, haven't they?
They've come closer together, but they're not perhaps close enough. Anyway, so it'll be interesting to see if he's picked for that game against Brighton, because he's, Salah, in those really, really incendiary interviews that he gave after the last match at home, he said, that could be the end. I'm going to be there. I've asked my mum to come and watch. I'm going to be there. It could possibly be his goodbye. And he's going off to the Africa Cup of Nations. So a goodbye anyway, because he's going off for a bit in any case. But there's sort of there could have been a double meaning to that.
Yeah, but it'd be extraordinary if he has already played his last match for Liverpool, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Given what he's done for the side.
It would be really extraordinary. But a lot of fans thought he should not have given those interviews, and he should not have been quite as outspoken as he was about being dropped. And
well, that was the point that was being made to Sly in midweek by his Dutch compatriot Clarence Seedorf during that interview. Exactly. All right.
Anyway, right. So your team played in Europe last night, and it was a good night for Nottingham Forest. It was also a really busy night all round in the Europa League and Europa Conference League, and it was a busy night for Roger Federer, the former tennis legend, watching his beloved Basel team lose at home to Aston Villa 2-1 in the Europa League. Yuri Tielemans' second-half goal was enough for that Villa victory. 8 wins in a row for Villa. Substitute Igor Jesus scored a late goal for Nottingham Forest to secure a 2-1 win over the Dutch side Utrecht, boosting their hopes of automatically progressing in the Europa League. And Crystal Palace beat the Irish side Shelbourne 3-0 in the Europa Conference. Jeremy Pino finished off a dominant first-half display as Palace secured their 4th win of the European campaign. But really wasn't a good night for Scottish sides. Salzburg Rangers really was very, very disappointing for them, particularly Wilfred Nancy, first Celtic manager to lose his first 2 games. Not a record that you would really want.
That's not a great start.
Now, last night, I just think it does really feel like Christmas when you start seeing the darts on the telly, you start seeing the costumes, the great lengths that people go to Ali Pali and watch the World Championships. And last night, Luke Littler was the main attraction, going out there in his first match to try and defend the world title that he won as a 17-year-old. Well, I think he just turned 18 when he won it. He's still 18. It was a tricky match against Darius Labanauskas of Lithuania, but he got through 3-0. And there was a bit of swagger there.
It's chilling.
You know what? It's £1 million on offer for the winner this year for the first time, which is so different to a few years ago. Bully, yes. I'm not sure that would be a very good night because you wouldn't be able to eat or drink anything without taking
very hot in there. Very hot in there.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, it's a serious business defending a world championship, isn't it?
Yeah.
But the atmosphere in there is like a big party. I mean, look
great time.
how they're dressed up. They look absolutely great.
Well, that's
having
all
that kind of
part of it.
serious focus while you've got all this, you know.
But do you know what?
dressing up.
What's really interesting about the darts, that was his 14th straight pro victory. The tickets are quite cheap. You know, they range from about 25 quid probably for last night. And the general average is £40 to £50 for a ticket, and they sell out in about 10 minutes. Unlike the World Cup tickets, which were announced yesterday, slightly more pricey. And you were talking about how they did it. Well, it pretty much is Super Bowl prices.
Really?
Super Bowl prices, £4,000 upwards. Final of the World Cup, £3,000 upwards.
Yeah,
so that's why they've done it like that.
Which for England and Scotland fans, really expensive when you've got to get there as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right, Jackie, thank you. Let's see you again tomorrow. Stay with us. Sam Washington is up next.